Chapter 770. Let the two men in, she instructed Yi Zhixiang in a low voice. Although her voice was soft, Yi Qian heard it clearly. She hung up the phone and saw Yi Zhixiang walking outside. A trace of coldness flashed through her cold eyes. She said calmly, "Old madam, you're still as unreasonable as before. You were young and didn't know any better. Now that you're more mature, you can see the true colors of some people. Old madam, don't you think I should be more careful?" Yi Qian walked to the coffee table and looked at tonight's dinner. The corners of her lips curled up even higher. Captain Xia was quite good at ordering. The combination of red and green was appetizing. After looking at the dinner, Yi Qian glanced coldly at the two thugs who came in. Not only was there coldness in her eyes, there was also mockery. She glanced meaningfully at the door. There was no trace of fear on her face. She said slowly, "After all, I almost died in the hands of Auntie's family. Grandma, weren't you sitting next to me? I was really scared. Your granddaughter was about to be beaten to death, but you didn't stop her." Yi Zhixiang's face darkened at the mention of the past. She chuckled. "Oh, you have a good memory at such a young age. How can you still remember something that happened so long ago? If you hadn't pushed your cousin into the snow, your uncle wouldn't have been so angry. Auntie is old, but her memory is indeed good. It was clear that Yi Ying and my cousin fought over food. I, who had neither food nor clothes, suffered for no reason." Yi Qian walked to the two thugs with a calm expression. They were standing behind old Madame Yi. Standing in front of old Madame Yi, Yi Qian pursed her lips and sighed. "Grandma, your granddaughter still remembers how cruel you were back then. I'm not the only one who remembers it. Everyone in the village remembers it. Later on, they often told me, a snake's tongue is sweet, a scorpion's tail is stinging. Both are not poisonous, but a woman's heart is the most poisonous. They told me to stay away from you." At this moment, old Madame Ye's expression had already sunk to the point that it was like water that had sunk into rust. It was dark and gloomy, yet it was as calm as water. "Looks like your aunt is getting worse and worse these years. She has spoiled you to the point where you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You even dare to talk back to your grandmother." He raised his hand and ordered the people behind him, "You too, take my disobedient granddaughter back." Back then, she sat on the chair and watched coldly as he was beaten to a pulp by Sun Yaozu. After 6 years, she still wanted him to respect her as his grandmother. It was truly wishful thinking. "Grandma, I don't dare to go with you. It wasn't easy for me to survive. Would I dare to acknowledge you? Would I dare to keep you? Do I dare to follow you?" Yi Qian let out a long sigh. With her beautiful features, she faced the two men who had stepped forward. Her right hand touched her left wrist, and the silver thread that acted as a bracelet fell into her hand. With a sigh, she smiled and said, "If it were you, would you dare to go back with someone who wants to kill you? You wouldn't dare, would you?" His actions were swift, completely like a sudden clap of thunder. He used the silver wire in his hand to fiercely wrap around the neck of one of the thugs. His arm pulled hard, and then he fiercely used his strength to wrap around the neck. He directly approached the man whose face had instantly turned red from the entanglement. He raised his leg and fiercely kicked the man's knee. This unforeseen event happened too quickly. It happened so quickly that old Madame Yi and Yi Zhixiang didn't even have time to react. The thug who had been strangled didn't even have time to scream before he fell to his knees. Chapter 771. Someone come, someone come. Someone come. Old Madame Yi was the first to react. At the same time, she pushed Yi Zhixiang aside and told her to leave first. How could Yi Qian let these two go so easily? She stepped on the man she kicked and leaped into the air. Her legs formed a pair of scissors and clamped down on the neck of the other thug who reacted. As she spun around, the thug screamed and fell to the ground with his neck cut by Yi Qian. There was no sound from him. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Coincidentally, he blocked the path of the screaming Yi Zhixiang. "Grandma, you're really not being kind. You actually sent thugs over. Do you miss your granddaughter? If that's the case, then I can only protect myself." In the blink of an eye, Yi Qian, who had deftly taken care of the two thugs, stood in front of the mother and daughter. His smile did not change as he said leisurely, "Since you've invited me, then I can only send you away like this." Old Madame Ye's authority had not been challenged in a long time. Her amiable face was now cold. Old Madame Ye, who had been praying to Buddha for a long time, was indeed affected by Buddha's aura. When she smiled, everyone would say that she was a kind person. At this moment, his face was gloomy and cold. It was even more chilling than his usual ferocious-looking face. Yi Qian had already seen some clues. Standing in the room, Yi Zhixiang only needed one look from old Madame Yi to immediately obey. Sun Yaozu was now outside the room, but the thugs were listening to old Madame Ye's orders. Back then, Sun Yaozu kicked her until she fainted and threw her unconscious self outside in the heavy snow. In the end, it was the village chief, Di Bo, who saved her. In the past, she thought that perhaps the whole family was afraid of her little uncle. Now, it seemed that Sun Yaozu was clearly standing at the door, but he did not come out. It was all under old Madame Ye's control. From this, it could be seen that the one in charge of her little uncle's family was still old Madame Yi. An old madam who could control her daughter's family outside, and even her son-in-law had to listen to her orders obediently. This was no ordinary old madam. Then, why did Sun Yaozu hate her so much? Why did her own grandmother just stand by and watch? Why did no one come out to stop Sun Yaozu's atrocities? She hadn't thought about these things before, but now that she saw these people, she couldn't help but think deeply. She was just a child and had no enmity with Sun Yaozu. Why would he hate her so much? Then, there was only one explanation. It was the resentment of his parents that made Sun Yaozu transfer his hatred to her. There was another problem. Dad and Yi Zhixiang were both the old lady's children, but why was the old lady so biased? Why did she only care about her daughter and not her son? Could it be that old Madame Yi, who was born as a capitalist, did not favor boys over girls, but instead favored girls over boys? No. She was especially fond of Yi Zhixiang's two sons, especially her cousin, whose surname was Yi. She doted on him so much that her cousin, whose surname was Sun, had to step aside. From this, it could be seen that old Madame Yi still favored boys over girls. Yi Jian, who originally didn't want to pay attention to the Yi clan, had a myriad of emotions at this moment. Moreover, because of the various almost abusive treatment from before, it caused her state of mind to suddenly lose balance. Her face became even colder, and even the space between her brows revealed a ghastly viciousness. When I was young and weak, I suffered in front of you. Now, I am no longer the Yi Qian of the past. How can I let you continue to be so arrogant? My grandmother is not kind, and my relatives are cruel. If I, Yi Qian, don't be strong, I'm afraid that tomorrow morning, there will be another unsolved case in this city. Chapter 772. Yi Chen's calm voice was now filled with hostility. He tightened his grip on the silver wire, causing the thug's eyes to roll back. He would definitely suffocate to death soon. Yaozu, Yaozu, come in quickly. That damned hussy is going to kill someone. Yi Zhixiang was terrified. If she had known that Yi Qian had become so powerful, she wouldn't have forced her way in. There was no movement outside. It was as if everyone had left. But from the looks of the door, they were still standing, not daring to move. Someone had taken out a gun and was aiming it at Sun Yaozu. When old Madame Yi saw that there was no movement outside, she vaguely understood that someone had come to the hotel. As the situation escalated, old Madame Yi calmed down. But when she saw Yi Qian's cold and ruthless expression, her heart couldn't help but thump. This damned girl was much more ruthless than her mother. She looked down and saw that the thug in her hand was about to suffocate to death. A glint flashed across old Madame Ye's eyes. If he died, she could just compensate the thug's family with a sum of money. As for Yi Jian, who had grown up, she seemed to be 16 or 17 years old. Murder was against the law, so she could not escape punishment. She could also punish her current guardian, by the way. If that was the case, it was indeed a good thing. She had thought it through well, but Yi Qian had undergone rigorous training. Even if he was filled with hostility, he didn't forget about the thug who was entangled by the silver wire. Seeing that the thug's black eyes were about to roll back, Yi Qian loosened his grip and easily retracted the silver wire. At the same time, he didn't even look down. He lifted his leg and kicked the man who was about to suffocate to death several times in the chest. Under old Madame Ye's secretly disappointed gaze, the thug began to cough violently. Yi Qian lifted his leg again and kicked the thug's leg. The thug, who was about 174 meters tall and weighed at least 140 kilograms, flew at least a meter away. This matter is getting a little out of hand. Lobby manager, how did you do your job? How could you let someone behave so atrociously in my hotel? A man in a silver-gray suit walked over. He was smiling as he walked in, but the viciousness in his eyes made Yi Zhixiang's mouth fall open. This 35-year-old man with fine wrinkles at the corners of his eyes looked a little familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. Those who could leave an impression on him must be from the underworld. Since they were from the underworld, she could not be presumptuous. She reminded old Madame Yi, whose face was still livid from anger, softly, "Mom, this man looks a little familiar. Are they from the underworld?" Old Madame Yi calmed herself down and looked at the man who was about 35 or 36 years old. Her slightly cloudy eyes began to size him up. The man walked to Yi Qian's side and sized up the young lady who had young Master Xia come out to protect her. She was indeed good-looking and had a certain spirit about her. Especially when he saw her attack just now. She was fast, ruthless, and accurate. She didn't look like a 16 or 17-year-old girl at all. Young Master Xia actually likes spicy food. If Yiwei knew about it, would she be surprised? "Young lady, I'm sorry. It's my hotel's fault for scaring you." As the man spoke, he took out a platinum business card. "My surname is Ho, and my first name is Z. You can call me Brother Z. Call me Uncle. Ha ha ha, it makes me look old." Chapter 773. If she really called him uncle, wouldn't that mess up the seniority? Young Master Xia probably didn't want to keep in touch with him. Yi Qian smiled and took the business card. He said politely, "Brother Z, I'm sorry to trouble you." "It's no trouble at all. It's our hotel service that's not up to par." Ho Zi raised his eyebrows and looked at the high school student whose eyebrows twitched when she heard his name. His smile deepened. He bet that this little girl definitely knew who he was. Ho Zi was famous in the underworld. He was both good and evil. People in the underworld were helpless against him, but people in the underworld were also helpless against him. Even if Xia Yiwei had feelings for such a man, she could only keep her distance. At least on the surface, she could only keep her distance. Old Madame Yi only knew that her heart sank. Ho Zi. She didn't expect that the man in front of her, who was more beautiful than a woman and didn't have the slightest bit of femininity, was actually Hosea. There was a saying in the underworld, it's better to provoke the police than Hosea. So it's Master Ho-san. Sorry for the disrespect. Old Madam Yi smiled. Her chubby face smiled amiably. I'm really sorry. I didn't expect this to be Master Ho-san's territory. My unfilial granddaughter, Hosea raised his hand and replied in a half-serious manner, I haven't been a master for many years. I've turned over a new leaf. How could anyone not know? I'm old. If I'm deaf, it's better for me to retire at home. If I come out and do bad things, even I, Hosea, who doesn't care about anything, can't stand it. His words made old Madame Ye's well-maintained face instantly turn pale. She calmly apologized, I see. No wonder I haven't heard from Boss Ho for so many years. This is my granddaughter beside Boss Ho. She had a misunderstanding with me and refused to go home. This is a family matter. I hope Boss Ho can be magnanimous and forgive us for being presumptuous. As for this matter, we'll close the door and deal with it ourselves. We won't disturb Boss Ho again. She apologized smoothly, as if she didn't feel that it was inappropriate for her to apologize to someone who wasn't even 40 years old. In the underworld, strength was the most important thing. Now that the Sun family was weak, compared to Hosea, it was like a bug to an eagle. Hosea didn't even have the interest to eat them. Yi Zhixiang giggled. Boss Ho, we really didn't know this was your hotel. We're really sorry. Hosea glanced at her, then turned to Yi Qian and said, Young lady, when you're 40 years old, don't ever smile like a young girl. You're just like a monster. Any man would be scared to death by her. As expected of Captain Xiao's good brother, his sarcasm was hilarious. Yi Qian nodded. There was a slight smile on his tender face, like the morning breeze blowing through dewy lotus leaves, bringing a refreshing and joyful smile. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Z. I'll remember it. I didn't expect Boss Ho to know how to joke. Yi Zhixiang's face was obviously stiff, but she still had to force a smile. When I'm almost 40, I'll have to be more careful. I can't scare away the person sleeping next to me. Old Madame Yi could see that this third Master Ho was stubborn and had made up his mind to stand up for Yi Qian. She immediately stopped insisting and said, Boss Ho, sorry for disturbing you tonight. It's getting late. My old bones usually sleep early, so I'll take my leave first. Have a safe trip, I won't see you out. Hosea would stand up for Yi Qian, but he couldn't get involved in Yi Qian's family matters. Moreover, he only came because of Xia Jinyuan's sister, Xia Yiwei, the #1 secretary of the southern province. Since the old man was leaving, his mission was completed. Chapter 774. Yi Qian didn't know how powerful Hosea was, but she knew that when she worked in a security company in her past life, the big boss had some friendship with Hosea. When the big boss found out that she was secretly being hunted down by a powerful person, he wanted to ask Hosea to protect her. However, not only did Hosea not appear, he only told the big boss that it was best to send her away, and he wouldn't interfere. It was best to send her away, and he wouldn't interfere. This was enough to prove that Yi Ying had found Hosea back then and wanted to ask Hosea's subordinates to get rid of her. Because of this, the big boss had no choice but to send her away. He called her to his office and sighed. What kind of big shot did you offend? Even Hosea can't appear. At that time, she didn't know Hosea, nor did she know that the big boss had contacted Hosea for her. She was stunned when she heard the name and thought to herself, even Monkey can't appear. What does my matter have to do with Monkey? When the big boss wrote the name, Hosea, she realized that Hosea wasn't the same as Monkey. He's a big shot who started from scratch in the underworld. He's both good and evil. No one knows how big his business is, but people in the underworld all know that it's better to provoke the police than Ho Zi. Yi Qian, you have to be careful when it comes to something that even Ho Zi can't appear. After that, the big boss, who was old and a retired soldier, said, of course, maybe it's because my relationship with Ho Zi hasn't reached the point where I can ask him to appear. She didn't know who Ho Zi was, but she could tell from the big boss's expression that he was a very powerful person. After the big boss gave a brief introduction of Ho Zi, her face turned pale. It was also because of this that she gave up on the idea of staying in the security company. She didn't expect Ying to be so capable that she could contact Ho Zi. With your ability, you can actually make a name for yourself, but the person you've offended is too powerful. He's so powerful that he can reach the heavens with just one hand. Yi Qian, I'll give you a suggestion. Go find Ho Zi and let him appreciate your ability. Maybe there's another way. His hotel industry is quite big. You can work in hotels with different stars. It just depends on your luck to find a hotel that happens to be Ho Zi's property. Before she left, the big boss gave her a piece of advice, which was also the reason why she persevered. If she could find Ho Zi, she would be able to survive. In her previous life, she had been working hard in the last few years of her life. While collecting information about Ying, she had also been searching for Ho Zi. At the same time, she had also started to enter star-rated hotels to look for Ho Zi. Unfortunately, in her previous life, she had been to so many cities and places. In order to find Ho Zi and Yi Qian, she had tried her best to learn a lot of things, but in the end, she still could not find him. In this lifetime, she had never thought of Ho Zi. Now that he had appeared out of nowhere, she was filled with emotions. What's more, they didn't expect the famous Master Ho to be so handsome. At 37 years old, he had an aura of vicissitudes of life. His slender eyes revealed a hint of melancholy. He didn't look like a big shot in the underworld. Instead, he looked more like a wandering artist. Ho Zi was currently using her gaze to send old Madame Yi, who was causing trouble in her hotel, away. She then looked at the two thugs who were rolling and crawling away, and the corner of her mouth curled up into a cold and disdainful smile. He's already so old, yet he's still causing trouble outside. Isn't he afraid of throwing his life away? Chapter 775. Take himself as an example. He started to cultivate his body and mind before he was 40, all for the sake of spending the money he earned to enjoy the rest of his life. He had such a high level of self-awareness, yet an old lady was still tormenting herself. It was rare. After watching them walk out of the room, Ho Zi turned around and saw that the little girl that Mr. Family Xia was looking at looked a little confused, as if she was recalling something. Ho Zi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Looking at him to recall something. This reaction was a bit incomprehensible. All right, little girl, I'll ask the staff to change your room. This room is not very clean, and it's not comfortable to live in. Ho Zi had no interest in asking a little girl what she was recalling. He was sure that he didn't know this delicate little girl, and he didn't think that he had such a big daughter outside. Yi Qian calmed himself down and smiled. No need to trouble yourself. With you here, I don't think they would dare to come again. He didn't call him Brother Zi for nothing. At that time, he saw old Madame Ye's face change drastically, and the kindness on her old face instantly collapsed. Old Madame Yi used to be like this in the past, and she was still like this now. It's good that you don't mind. If there's anything, you can contact me directly. Ho Zi always approved of other people's choices as long as it didn't have anything to do with his own interests. Hearing this, he smiled. Little girl, you're quite skilled. A few small fries are indeed no match for you. But I see that this old lady is still causing trouble despite her age. It's obvious that she's a difficult old lady. There are two kinds of people who act when they're old. One is that the older they get, the calmer they get, and the other is that the older they get, the more ruthless they get. I think that old lady belongs to the latter. Little girl, you have to be careful when you go out alone. After knowing Yi Wei for so long, it was rare for her to take the initiative to ask him to protect the little girl that Mr. Family Xia fancied. Since he agreed to this matter, he had to put on a good attitude. Reminding a little girl was just a matter of a few words. Big Boss said that Ho Zi was a very ruthless person who never meddled in other people's business, but Ho Zi in front of him didn't seem like a ruthless person. At least, he was still very concerned about some people. For example, Xia Jinyuan and the VIP card holder, Miss Xia. He came out today to help him must be because of them. Thus, he replied with a smile. He maintained his politeness and calmly said, "Thank you for your reminder. I will take note of it. Enjoy your meal, goodbye." Although she was a little girl, Ho Zi was still quite gentlemanly. She also had a faint arrogance that she had long cultivated. She elegantly led her people away. When he reached the door, Yi Jian, who was watching him leave, saw him stop. She turned around and asked with a smile, "Do you know me?" "No, I don't know him." Yi Jian's heart skipped a beat. What a sharp master Ho! Thinking back to her previous life, she couldn't find the person she had been looking for years. Now that she thought about it, it was a bit unbelievable. Because of her relationship with Xia Jinyuan, many things had changed. Things that were difficult in the past could be easily solved now. Some people were far away, but in this life, they were right in front of her. After all, everything had changed. It was full of challenges and uncertainty. Chapter 776. Ho Zi narrowed his eyes. His eyes flashed with a sharp glint. His aura suppressed the entire room. Is that so? Why do I feel like you know me? Maybe I'm overthinking things. You're overthinking things. I'm just a student. I don't have much contact with the outside world, so it's impossible for me to know you. Xia Jinyuan has never mentioned you in front of me. Not only did his aura make the air seem stifling, but it also felt a little cold. At this moment, Ho Zi was no longer the Ho Zi who spoke lazily and carelessly when he came in. He was now the third Master Ho of the underworld. Yi Qian answered Third Master Ho calmly. There was no fear in his eyes or expression. Ho Zi laughed. Family Xia's sixth brother has good taste. You're not bad either. I haven't met such an interesting girl like you in a long time. You don't have to be so polite. Just call me Brother Z like Family Xia's sixth brother does. Although he still had his suspicions, she had invited Family Xia's sixth brother here to tell him that she had no ulterior motives. She wanted him to be at ease. She was smart, tactful, and had a sense of character. She didn't try to get close to him. If she really knew Ho Zi, she wouldn't be so calm. She would either be afraid or want to get close to him. However, she didn't do either. Even if he had his suspicions, it wasn't worth mentioning. Yi Qian, who was slightly relieved, looked at him and said politely, "Okay, Brother Z. If there's anything else later, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you." "No problem. Since Family Xia's sixth brother brought you here, he must have some ulterior motives. If there's anything, you can call me anytime. You can change rooms if you want." When a woman was straightforward, it was more comforting than when a man was straightforward. When Family Xia's sixth brother liked this girl, he was quite fond of her. There weren't many people who could catch the eye of a loner like him. At his age, his judgment of people was getting sharper and sharper, so it was fate that caught his eye. Looking at this little girl today, He felt that it was fate that brought them together. It would be fine for him to acknowledge her as his younger sister. Yi Qian's eyes flickered at his words. Captain Xia had brought her here because he was worried that Yi Zhifan would cause trouble for her. He was so attentive to her. If it weren't for old Madame Ye's incident today, she wouldn't have known that Captain Xia had meticulously arranged for her to stay in a hotel. Thank you so much for your trouble. If there's anything I need, I won't hesitate to come and trouble you again. Yi Qian didn't know how to deal with people from the underworld, but his intuition told him that it was better to be direct. No one liked people who didn't mean what they said. After all, he was the one who called the front desk first and asked the hotel to send someone over to solve his problem. Hearing this, the smile on Ho Zi's face, which was more beautiful than a woman's, deepened. Although he had crow's feet at the corners of his eyes, he was more charming than when he was younger. His entire body exuded the aura of a superior and the elegance of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. Ho Zi, who was in the prime of his life, was also the husband of many women's dreams. I don't need a girl like you to be polite. If you encounter any problems in Nan province that you can't solve, come to Caesar Hotel to find someone or give me a call. Just say the word, and Brother Z will settle it for you. I can't let you call me Brother Z, for nothing. Chapter 777. Yi Qian was surprised. Did Master Ho San mean that he would protect him from now on? Ho Zi laughed even louder. He thought she was calm, but it turned out that she was still surprised. Come stay at the hotel when you have time. Brother Z doesn't have much, but the hotel has a lot of rooms. Ho Zi was familiar with those who caught his eye. This was a man who couldn't be rejected or resisted. It was easy to feel his sincerity. Things had escalated to this point. Even if Yi Jian was quick-witted, he couldn't keep up with him for a while. Yi Qian was still stunned as he watched him leave and close the door. It was so hard to find someone in her previous life, but she met him so easily in this life. He even asked her to call him Brother Z and told her to look for him if she needed anything. Yi Jian couldn't help but sigh. Too many things had changed in this life. She didn't want to seek Master Ho's protection anymore. That way, she would be able to get it easily in this life. Even though she didn't need it, it was still something she was happy about. At least when she heard him say, "Look for him if you needed anything," she was a little excited. It was as if she had accomplished something big. Because what she couldn't do before she died in her previous life, she had done it in this life. She finally realized what she wanted in her previous life. Wasn't that a big deal? Thinking about it, Yi Qian's mood improved. With Master Hausen's protection, old Madame Yi would have a headache, and Yi Zhixiang would be even more depressed. If they weren't happy, she would be happy. Yi Qian, who had just started eating, didn't notice that the food was already cold. As she ate, her smiling eyes suddenly darkened. She thought of something. The big boss said that everyone in the restaurant knew Ho Zi. Old Madame Ye's attitude changed 180 degrees after Ho Zi said his name. She even called him Master Ho San with some fear. That's right, she did call him Master Ho San. It was the honorific used by the gangsters for Ho Zi. That means if old Madame Yi was a gangster, then Yi Zhixiang's family was definitely gangsters. Otherwise, why did they not return to the village all year round? Even if he came back, he would do it secretly. Sun Yaozu was not blind in his right eye before. In the village, it was said that he was injured in the line of duty. Since he was injured in the line of duty, why did he have to sneak back to the village after becoming blind? As he thought deeper, Yi Qian's expression turned cold. When old Madame Yi left the village, it was not long after her mother's death and 3 days before the military sent people to the village. After that, she and old man Yi never returned to the village. It wasn't until she was in the 4th grade of elementary school that she brought her aunt's family home on the eve of the Lunar New Year that she saw that Sun Yaozu was blind. At the same time, it was on the day they returned that he was beaten up by Sun Yaozu. Meanwhile, old Madame Yi was looking on coldly from the side. Her youngest aunt, Yi Zhixiang, was cursing loudly, saying that she and her mother were the bane of the Yi family. She cursed her father to death and cursed her entire family. The chopsticks in Yi Qian's hand had unknowingly fallen to the ground. Not only was his face ghastly pale, it was also filled with a thick sense of hostility. Her mother was a soldier and a martyr. Old Madame Yi left not long after her death. A few years later, the blind Sun Yaozu came back and beat her to death. Yi Zhixiang cursed her and her mother as the bane of the entire family. Things that had never crossed her mind suddenly came together, stringing together a very clear line. Chapter 778. A clue that was most likely related to why Sun Xueqing sacrificed herself appeared in Yi Jian's mind. Yi Jian guessed that Sun Yaozu's right eye was blinded because of Sun Xueqing. In her previous life, Yi Qian had always thought that she was beaten up because of her father's early death. But now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. It was because her mother had blinded Sun Yaozu. So that's why Yi Zhixiang hated me and why Sun Yaozu wanted to kill me. Yi Jian bent down to pick up the chopsticks. She then stood up and went to the bathroom to wash the chopsticks over and over again with clean water. In the sound of water, Yi Jian raised her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyebrows were cold and her eyes were full of murderous intent. If her mother's sacrifice had something to do with Sun Yaozu, then, not to mention blinding him in one eye, even if she had to kill him, she would do it. Yi Qian wanted to go back to Shuka village. She wanted to ask Grandpa Zhen what had happened back then. She wanted to ask why old Madame Yi had no motherly love for her father. She wanted to ask why she would help an outsider kill her own granddaughter. There must be a secret hidden in old Madame Ye's heart, and also in Grandpa Zhen's heart. At this moment, Yi Qian was really close to the truth. But there were still many questions that she couldn't understand. She put down the clean chopsticks and looked at the delicious food. Yi Qian lost her appetite. There were a few things that she could be sure of. First, Sun Yaozu's right eye was blinded by her mother. Second, Sun Yaozu was a gangster. It was very likely that her mother was trying to kill him and had no choice but to run away. Third, Sun Yaozu's identity couldn't be exposed. Old Madame Yi was now the head of her aunt's family. Just these few points were enough to solve many of the mysteries in her heart. She also understood why Sun Yaozu didn't show up. Couldn't be exposed. That was interesting. Yi Qian stood up with a slight smile. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. She walked to the phone and dialed the number that Zhang Bin had given her. She needed to find Zhang Bin and ask his father. After all, Uncle Zhang was a criminal police officer. He might know something. In just a few minutes, Yi Qian began his plan to make old Madame Yi leave in a sorry state. Meanwhile, Ho Zi, who had left, was still outside instructing his subordinates to pay more attention to the 9th floor. Both of you stay here tonight. The two of you, go to the 9th floor and keep a close watch. Don't alarm the guests who are staying in the hotel. Ho Zi left with a faint smile on her face after she personally made the arrangements. Family Xia, who was the most muddle-headed young master when he was young, did not expect him to have such good taste. Just by looking at the little girl's face, he could tell from her eyes that were as clear as water and could even reflect the moon that she was not a girl who liked to take shortcuts. As Ho Zi walked towards the elevator, she took out her phone and dialed the number without even looking at it. A voice with mature charm and a hint of wickedness could be heard faintly in the long corridor of the hotel. Not bad, little girl. You should really come and take a look. Your sixth brother has good taste. Although he's a little young, he's indeed a talent. She didn't explain much when she didn't get along with him. I didn't see any signs of anger. She directly took down two of the thugs and instantly took control of the situation. Even if I didn't show up, she could handle it. Chapter 779. The torrential rain showed no signs of stopping. Within an hour, the low-lying land in the southern province was flooded with water and the water level by the river had risen to a terrifying level. Xia Yiwei clamped her phone between her head and shoulder. Her high heels made a thump-thump-thump sound as she hurriedly walked. It's rare to hear you praise a little girl. It seems like my sixth brother has good taste. Ho Zi's brows furrowed when she heard the sound of high heels clicking against the ground. I can't believe that the devil incarnate from my childhood has become such a capable person. I heard from the staff that he's a major. Although his rank is still a little low, he's still young. When he reaches my age, he'll be even more successful. Ho Zi didn't leave the hotel. Instead, he pressed the button for the 23rd floor. This was his second home in the southern province. It was also the place where he went on dates with women. This woman was also the only woman who could enter both of his homes at the same time. Xia Yiwei. After entering the elevator, Ho Zi's handsome face, which would make any woman feel ashamed, became even more charming. He chuckled and asked, "Why are you here tonight?" "A bottle of good red wine just arrived from France. Do you want to try it together?" A staff member from the provincial office hurried over. "Secretary Xia, the water level by the river is rising rapidly. The flood control station called and said that it's best to start the relocation plan." Ho Zi could still hear the voice on the phone at the beginning, but he couldn't hear anything towards the end. However, she didn't hang up the phone. He would never hang up on her first. "I'm not free tonight." "Find another woman," Xia Yiwei said calmly. A trace of gloominess flashed across her beautiful eyes. Sixth brother was right. She had fallen in love with a man who was destined to never fall in love. Why should she spend the rest of her life with this man? It was time to let go. Xia Yiwei, who was also sitting in the elevator, quietly looked at the metal mirror in the elevator. Although the woman in the mirror was still beautiful and enchanting, her eyes had withered. Her face, which could once make a monkey run into a lamppost, was old. Because she was old, she no longer had so much time to torment the same man. From the age of 17 until now, she was 34 years old. 17 years of ties should be over. The phone rang again. The sound was exceptionally loud in the cramped elevator. It was a call from the governor of the southern province. He needed an emergency number for flood control. As for Ho Zi, Xia Yiwei threw him to the back of his mind. Find out who has been by Miss Xia's side recently. Report to me immediately if there's anything. Ho Zi put away her phone and ordered with a sinister look in her eyes, "No matter who it is, find out for me." Old Madame Yeats sat on the sofa and said coldly, "I don't care who's behind her. Jifan, find out everything. This is really going against the heavens. Since when did you have me in your eyes?" If the people from the hotel hadn't come in time, the two staff members under your brother-in-law would have been killed by her. You're so vicious at such a young age. You're not like our Yi family's daughter at all. If we don't teach him a lesson, he'll be a scum in society. Our Yi family can't tolerate this kind of scum. Old Madame Ye's voice was deep. The coldness in her every word made Yi Ying's heart tremble. At the same time, an indescribable excitement rose in her heart. Chapter 780. This way, Yi Qian's life would be even more difficult. She could forget about having a good life. There was Luo Ran in school, and outside, there was grandmother and aunt's family. Ha ha ha, what was this called? This was called being besieged on all sides. Let's see how she can smoothly survive her high school life. She was only thinking about Yi Qian, but she didn't see the coldness on Yi Jifan's face, nor did she see the cold smile on Aunt Yi Jixiang's face, nor did she see the scheming look in Grandmother Ye's eyes. After the family of 3 left, Yi Jixiang poured tea for Grandmother Yi. She smiled and said, "Mom, you're the best. This way, we don't have to go against Master Ho-san. Second brother can help us. It's much more convenient to let the men handle things outside. We just have to talk at home. Go tell Yaozu to stay away from home for the next few days. Find out where your second brother's confidence comes from. As for that girl Yi Qian, she was delayed by that idiot second sister-in-law. If we don't bring her back, I'm afraid she'll end up like her short-lived mother. It's better to bring her back and be at ease." Grandmother Yi sighed softly. Her voice was low and had the lethargy of an old person, but also the peace of time. Those who didn't know her well wouldn't think that she was an extremely powerful old lady. The Yi family lived in a suite in a hotel. There was a living room outside, and the bedrooms were inside. At this time, no one was sleepy. They were all sitting in the living room and chatting. Grandfather Yi, who had been playing mahjong next door, was finally invited over by Sun Yaozu. Grandfather Yi had never been in charge of anything. He was well-fed and smart, but in front of Grandmother Yi, he couldn't stand up straight. Now, he didn't need to manage anything outside the house. He ate well, played well, and played mahjong every day. His life was very carefree. Let me say, you shouldn't have gone to look for her today. Now, you've alerted the enemy. It'll be difficult for you to find her next time. Old Man Yi, whose hair was white and whose eyes were cloudy, yawned as he walked in. Old Man Yi, who was 68 years old this year, had a stooped body. Although he looked plump, the wrinkles on his face were much deeper than old Madame Ye's. He looked like an old man who was nearing the end of his life. He walked to the coffee table and poured himself a cup of tea. Then, he sat on the other side of the sofa. His voice was old and weak as he said, "You can't raise her well. No matter how well you raise her, she's still not mature. Son-in-law's eyes have been injured for so many years. Although this matter needs to be settled, do you think it's a good opportunity to settle it now?" Even old man Ye's words were more direct than old Madame Ye's. He was born as a peasant. Even though he had lived a comfortable life for so many years, he still did not have a noble aura in his bones. He was wearing a cotton linen long shirt and trousers that were similar to those worn by Tai Chi practitioners. He did not have the demeanor of a celestial being. Instead, he looked like a performer in an opera. As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes as if he had really fallen asleep. Old Madame Yi glanced at him. The old man's words weren't pleasant to hear, but he did remind her. He then said to Sun Yaozu, "When the rain lessens, leave the South Province as soon as possible. Yi Qian is much smarter than your second brother's Ying. I'm worried about her, and I'm also worried about Third Master Ho. You should leave the South Province's airport tonight. It's best that you go abroad to relax." Chapter 781. Do you mean that the wretched girl might have guessed something? Sun Yaozu had always listened to his mother-in-law's arrangements, but he was unwilling to give up. Damn it, I thought I could take revenge when I came back this time. Who knew that my second brother's family would raise a wolf cub? From what you're saying, you can't do anything to her this time. You can't even raise her well. You have to put in more effort. Old Man Yi, who had closed his eyes, suddenly opened his mouth inexplicably as if he was talking in his sleep. After that, he went silent. Yi Jixiang's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but look at old Madame Yi and ask with her eyes. Your father is playing dumb now. He has one foot in the coffin, so he can only play dumb. Old Madame Yi said lightly. Every word could be understood, but when put together, those who didn't know the situation couldn't understand. Why did he have to pretend to be confused? As for what it was, only they themselves would know. Yi Zhixiang nodded. That's true. Father can only rely on me now. Revenge must be taken. Yaozu's eyes always remind me of the stupidest thing I've done in my life. Since she's still a wolf cub, we have to deal with her before she reaches adulthood. Old Madame Yi seemed a little tired. After she finished speaking, she looked a little tired. Even the wrinkles on her face deepened. She was already in her 60s. No matter how much she took care of her skin, the skin on her face still looked dry and wrinkled. Zhixiang, pay attention to the weather outside. Go back to the room and pack Yaozu's luggage first. Leave immediately when the rain lightens. If it's still this heavy, we have to leave. She raised her drooping eyelids. A trace of shrewdness flashed in her cloudy eyes. She sighed. It's too late. I'm afraid something will happen. Okay, go back to your room. I have to recite the scriptures. The wretched girl was too much like her mother. When she looked over, it was as if no demons or monsters could get close to her. Her mother was a daughter-in-law and respected her mother-in-law more or less, but the wretched girl didn't. There was calmness and disgust in her eyes. When she mentioned her grandmother, the coldness in her eyes frightened her, an old woman who had lived for more than 60 years. She was not easy to deal with. She was even harder to deal with than her mother. If he wanted to keep his daughter's family safe, he had to be careful. Old Madame Yi could warn her daughter's family to be careful of Yi Qian, but she didn't warn Yi Zhifan's family at all. She even asked them to return Yi Qian to her side. Her attitude towards the two families was extremely biased. It had been the same for so many years, and Yi Zhifan was already used to it. This old woman obviously came back for that wretched girl, Yi Qian. What do you think she's up to now? Back in the room, Sun Dongqing couldn't wait to ask. She didn't even check how much money was in the bank card that Yi Zhixiang had given her. Yi Zhifan looked at Yi Ying, who hadn't left yet, and said, Ying Ying, go back to your room and rest. Children shouldn't get involved in adult matters. You did a good job at your grandma's place today. Go back to your room and see what gift your aunt brought for you. He could tell Ying how to get what she wanted, but he didn't intend to tell a child everything that was too dark. If he did, it would harm the whole family. Chapter 782. When Ying heard this, she pouted unhappily. Dad, why can't I listen? I'm already so old, how am I still a child? Besides, I also want to know why Grandma doesn't like Yi Qian so much. She didn't like me in the past either. She likes you now only because your dad got promoted. Your grandma, you can't imagine how much I suffered because of her. Sun Dongqing didn't want her daughter to know about those terrible things, but she also didn't want her daughter to get close to a vicious old thing. She then added, you should respect her a little, but don't be deceived by her flowery words. Yi Zhifan didn't reprimand his wife. Instead, he nodded and said in a deep voice, listen to what your mom says and remember it well. Go back to your room and sleep. Go to school early tomorrow to complete the transfer procedures. You still have to report to second high in the morning. She couldn't go to the provincial first high, but she could still go to second high. With Yi Zhifan's current connections, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find a school for his daughter. Yi Ying left unhappily, but when she returned to her room to open her present, she was happy again. In the future, don't mention the past in front of Ying Ying. If my mom finds out, you know what she'll do to make us suffer. When Yi Ying returned to her room, Yi Jifan lit a cigarette and fell into deep thought. Sun Dongqing didn't disturb him. Instead, she brewed a cup of tea and placed it on the coffee table. Her expression was as gloomy as her husband's. She probably didn't come back because of Yi Qian. I'm afraid she came back because of me. I agreed to adopt Yi Qian and raise him according to her wishes because we agreed to give me the jade pendant and little sister the money. After a while, Yi Jifan finally brought up a deal from the past. It was a deal that even Sun Dongqing didn't know about. When Sun Dongqing, whose expression was gloomy, heard that there was such a thing and that it had been hidden from her for more than 10 years, she was so angry that she picked up a pillow from the sofa and threw it at her husband. Yi Jifan, you're working with that damn old woman to go against me. Stop being crazy. Sit tight. Yi Jifan threw the pillow to the ground and said angrily in a low voice, "You're so angry now. If I told you then, wouldn't the whole village know about it? It's very likely that my mother wants me to do something when she comes back, and this has something to do with my little sister. She knows that this jade pendant is in my hands, so she can use it to blackmail me." Sun Dongqing was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. She gnashed her teeth and said, "You old bastard, as soon as she comes back, our family won't have a good life." After that, she asked, "Have you thought of anything else?" "Yes, resolve Sun Yaozu's identity as a fugitive." Sun Dongqing's shrill voice immediately came from the room. "Old thing, she's crazy. If she really dares to do that, I'll stab her to death. She wants to ruin your future. I'm not done with her. Keep your voice down. Do you think the soundproofing in the hotel is good?" Yi Jifan glared at them, and the couple's voices gradually quieted down. The rain did not stop, and the TV issued an orange rainstorm warning. 5 minutes later, Zhang Bin called Yi Qian back. "It's raining heavily. The phone lines in town must have malfunctioned. I called a few times, but I couldn't get through. Why are you looking for my dad? It feels like you don't visit without a reason." Zhang Bin stayed at his grandmother's house, so it was very convenient to contact him. He asked loudly, "Is there something urgent? I'll try again later." Chapter 783. If there was a problem with the phone line, she might not be able to get through even if she was late. After thinking of someone else, Yi Qian said, "It's nothing urgent. I just have something to ask Uncle Zhang. You don't have to contact him anymore. I'll think about it myself." After chatting for a while, she hung up. There was one more person she could look for, and that was Yang Heng. Yang Heng's father was the director of the Transportation Bureau. She wasn't sure if she could ask him. As she thought about it, her slender fingers had already dialed the number. She didn't know Yang Heng's home phone number, but she knew the class monitor Lu Xian's home phone number. She had to ask him first. After circling around, Yang Heng, who was wearing a tank top and shorts, received a call from Yi Qian. He was surprised and said directly, "You actually called me. You even know my home phone number." Zhang Bin was also surprised, and now Yang Heng was also surprised. It seemed that she had to be more careful and keep in touch with her classmates. After Yi Qian explained the purpose of the call, Yang Heng immediately agreed, "I have to say, you found the right person. My whole family is a police officer with all kinds of systems. I'll call you later." When Yi Qian heard this, he knew it wouldn't be difficult. After hanging up, he quietly waited for Yang Heng to call. The Public Security Bureau was still cooperative in investigating a fugitive, but it was after work hours, so the police on duty had to investigate. It took a little longer. Half an hour later, Yi Qian received a call from Yang Heng. "You can't find the name." Yi Qian's eyes narrowed when he heard the news. The name couldn't be found. Maybe Sun Yaozu used a fake name. He pursed his lips and said, "What about the portrait? Can you find it?" When Yang Heng heard her asking so carefully, his heart couldn't help but sink. "Did you run into a wanted criminal? Did you contact me because you thought he looked familiar? What's your address? I'll get my uncle and the others to come over." "No, don't be anxious." Yi Qian, who grew up in a police family, was very vigilant. He didn't want to alert the enemy, so he quickly said, "I didn't run into him. I'm just a little suspicious. Since you can't find the name, I'll show you the portrait tomorrow. See if you can find it." Yang Heng sighed in relief and said with a smile, "That's fine. You are also very good at drawing, just like the photo. If there is really such a person, my uncle will be able to find out." "You mean after I finish drawing, you can help me hand it over to the Public Security Bureau for investigation?" Yi Qian really didn't expect to take Sun Yaozu's portrait directly to the Public Security Bureau. He was afraid that if it wasn't Sun Yaozu's portrait, the Public Security Bureau would punish him severely. If you draw a portrait of whoever you suspect is a fugitive, then everyone will learn from you. The entire public security system will be investigating who is a criminal every day. It was not even 9 o'clock in the evening, and the television was playing Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It was about to show the return of Sima Yi, who was fighting in the south and north. Yi Qian even heard Zhuge Liang say, "What is there to fear about Qiao Rui? The only patient is Sima Yi." Immediately after, a man's voice was heard. Yi Qian quickly said, "Then you should rest early. We'll talk tomorrow." "Okay, see you tomorrow." Yang Heng immediately covered the phone before his father scolded him. He didn't want to embarrass himself in front of his female classmates. After hanging up, he stood up, raised his eyebrows and said to Chief Yang proudly, "Yi Qian, the girl who helped the police solve a case in your unit last time. She's quite a good girl." With a senior high school student in the family, no matter which family it was inevitable that they would be nervous. Even Chief Yang was the same. He was afraid that his child would fall in love at such a critical time in high school. Chapter 784. Yang Heng's mother overheard the call from a girl and immediately told her husband. She was afraid that a girl would call a boy in the middle of the night. She was afraid that they were in a relationship. Director Yang laughed and scolded, "You little brat, you should learn more from her if you know she's good. I heard from your aunt that she took a college entrance exam when she entered the university and her score was dozens of points higher than the admission score for undergraduate courses. Good students could play with good students, even if they were boys and girls." As a parent, he was assured. "That's so good. Heng, isn't it your birthday next week? Your dad and I thought that you're an 18-year-old adult and wanted to celebrate. How about it? Let's have a birthday party at your grandma's house. We'll invite our friends and family and your classmates." Yang Heng's mother was relieved when she heard that the girl who called was so good. She even encouraged her son to invite the girl home. Yang Heng also felt that it was a good idea. He shook his shoulders and walked to his room. "This arrangement is good. I'll tell her tomorrow. Also, Mom, don't answer my calls secretly. If I really had a relationship, I would have been in one a long time ago." Director Yang's house was a unit of the Transportation Bureau. It had an area of about 120 square meters, with 3 rooms and 2 living rooms. It was enough for a family of 3 to live in. Yang Heng, who was walking to his bedroom, turned around and smiled at Mrs. Yang, who looked a little embarrassed. He revealed his neat and white teeth and said, "Your son, I am the most popular person in school. Since I entered school, I have received at least 50 love letters, if not 100. Therefore, if I really have a girl I like, I would have already fallen in love. You little brat, go back to your room and sleep. Don't talk nonsense with your mom all day long." In the north, it was called talking nonsense. In the south, it was called talking nonsense. Director Yang was a southerner, so he scolded jokingly. After Yang Heng returned to his room, he whispered to his wife, "Our son has grown up. There are some things that he doesn't want us to know. Don't always eavesdrop on his calls." Last time, the colleagues patrolling the streets said that they saw our son enter the internet cafe and fight. But he never told us when he came back. This shows that he knows what to do. As long as his grades are good and he knows what to do, you don't have to worry too much. A person's temper is flexible. The harder you suppress it, the stronger it will rebound. If you don't care about it and only remind him appropriately, you'll be able to reduce the pressure on your son and achieve twice the result with half the effort. Family education was also divided into high and low levels. For example, Director Yang's way of educating his son made Yang Heng know what to do no matter how much he mingled outside. For example, Luo Ran's education was piled up with money. He only focused on whether money could solve problems, but he never considered whether Luo Ran himself needed education. Another type was so strict that at home, the parents were the sky, and the children could only listen to them. If they didn't listen, they would be beaten or scolded. After a long time, the children would be pressed into a tight spring, and once the rebound situation became serious. No matter what kind of parental love it was, Yi Qian would never get it. After hanging up the phone, she sat in the lounge chair and remained motionless in the same position for at least half an hour. When Yi Qian sensed that the storm outside the window had lessened, he stood up and walked to the window to take a look. Then, he looked at the time. If the flight had not been delayed, Xia Jinyuan would have already boarded the plane. When they were on an emergency mission, they would only take the shortest time and the best route. Chapter 785. The rain was getting lighter, and the water level of the river had just reached the warning line. Old Madame Yi came out after chanting the Buddhist scriptures and saw that the rain was getting lighter, so she called Yi Zhixiang. "The rain is getting lighter, let Yaozi go first. Tomorrow, I will discuss with your second brother how to solve the problem of Yaozu's identity." Old Madame Yi did not know if Yi Qian would really investigate, but when she thought of his clear and sharp eyes, she could not help but think about it. Regardless of whether he would really investigate, it was better to be cautious and prepare for a rainy day. Sun Yaozu did not have much resistance to leaving first, but he was not satisfied that he did not teach Yi Qian a lesson when he came back. He took his passport and said before he left, "Honey, since you are going to stay for a few more days, please be careful. Once I return to the southern province, I will be in trouble." He did not go through the customs to go to Hong Kong, but he had a special method. As long as he left the southern province, everything would be fine. "Okay, since when did my mother and I make you worry? It's good to go to Hong Kong. Let's see if the gangster there has settled your Hong Kong identity. You can pay as much as you want." Yi Zhixiang was not afraid of Sun Yaozu fooling around, but she was afraid that he would forget about business. Although she and old Madame Yi handled the family business, Sun Yaozu handled many of the underground businesses, which were the most profitable ones. If something happened to him, the whole family would be finished. "Manager, the guest in room 809 has left." The hotel staff on the 8th floor reported the situation to the hotel manager. Not long after, in Ho Zi's room, the TV that was playing a movie cut to the video of the hotel elevator. A short man who was at most 1.7 meters tall with short limbs was seen entering the elevator with his luggage. Ho Zi did not switch the video back to the TV until the man left the hotel. There were too many people in the underworld, and he did not know every single one of them. These were not important, what was important was that they knew him. After watching the TV for a while, he looked at the time. It was already 10 o'clock at night, but the person he was waiting for had not arrived. Guanlai frowned and showed a trace of annoyance. Then, Houzi ordered, "Go and find out which underworld this family is from, and give me their information." He didn't know why Yi Wei was angry, but he had to coax her. She didn't care about gold, silver and jewelry, and she didn't lack luxury brands. He could only find another way. Family Xia, the girl that old Six had taken a fancy to, was in trouble, and the trouble came from her family. It would be better to buy a favor from the girl that he admired, and then hand over the information he found to Yi Wei as a reward. Once Houzi made up her mind, she began to investigate Sun Yaozu. However, she did not expect that Xia Yiwei's current attitude was not something that could be easily coaxed. Yi Qian did not know that Sun Yaozu had already left. She woke up punctually at 5:30 a.m. the next day and started her morning exercise. The garden design of the five-star hotel was very good. There was even a large open-air swimming pool at the back. When Yi Qian jogged past the swimming pool, he happened to see a tall and sexy woman in a bikini emerge from the water. As the water splashed, the woman raised her head and let her long hair swing behind her back. That action! It was so sexy that she could not help but stare at it. She even stopped jogging. The woman who had just stood up and was about to get out of the pool had her hands on the metal handrail, when a pair of slender hands reached over. Someone chuckled and said to the beautiful woman who just came out of the bath, "Seeing a beauty coming out of the bath early in the morning, my luck is not bad." Chapter 786. Yi Qian quickly averted her gaze, not because the man was only wearing a pair of shorts, but because the man who spoke was Houzi. A handsome man paired with a beautiful woman. It was a beautiful scene. "When did you arrive last night? Why didn't you call me? Not only did you not call me, you even told the front desk not to tell me." Houzi draped a white towel over Xia Yiwei's shoulders like a gentleman. His gaze landed on her cleavage that extended into her swimwear, and he narrowed his eyes slightly. "Do you want to go to my room to change?" Yi Qian ran even faster. It wasn't that she wanted to see or hear, but she was running right next to them. She couldn't even continue running now. She'd better go back to her room to tidy up, check out, and leave quickly. She felt that when Houzi spoke just now, he glanced at her coldly with a hint of ruthlessness. After yesterday's heavy rain, the sky looked as if it had been washed by water today. Yi Qian took a few deep breaths of fresh rainwater and stealthily avoided the men in black who were looking for her. When she realized that they were looking for her, Yi Qian knew that she couldn't avoid them anymore. She was mesmerized by the beautiful woman's figure just now and didn't see Houzi coming over. Now, she was being targeted by this gangster. Instead of waiting for them to find her, she might as well stand up herself. Otherwise, when Houzi found out it was her, he would suspect that she purposely appeared in the garden to get close to him. She stopped avoiding the men who were looking for her and smiled. "I was nearby just now. I can go with you guys to explain to Brother Z." After National Day, there was another heavy rain. Yesterday morning, she could still wear short sleeves, but today, she could wear long sleeves. If she was afraid of the cold, she could even cover herself with a thin jacket. The water in the pool wasn't warm, but fresh water that was changed this morning. Against the sky blue tiles of the pool, the water in the pool looked clear and clean. Xia Yiwei was used to swimming in the morning. As long as she had the time, she would swim half an hour earlier than usual. She had specifically instructed the front desk when she came over last night, but she did not expect to meet the man who had been entangled with her for 17 years in the morning. She did not accept his invitation and said faintly, "No, I still need to swim for a while. Boss Ho is very busy. If there's nothing else, please leave as soon as possible." The cold feeling came again. This time, there was no need to guess. He could hear it just by listening. "What's wrong?" What's not going well at work? Let's hear it and see if I can share your burden. Last night, I heard someone on the phone saying that the water level in the river is rising very fast and they need to organize a retreat. Did the work last night not go well? Ho-zi didn't realize that Xia Wei was starting to distance herself from her. She smiled and coaxed her. At the same time, she reached out to pull the beauty into her arms so that they could sit together in the pool umbrella chair. Xia Wei wasn't a soft person. She slapped his hand away and said with a faint smile, "Boss Ho, I'm tired. Please let me go." Ho-zi's expression changed when she heard the double entendre. Third master. The bodyguard who had been standing by the side saw that the person below had something to report, so he reminded him softly, "I've brought her over." Ho-zi, who was staring at Xia Wei, was in a very gloomy mood. When he heard this, he narrowed his slender phoenix eyes and a trace of malice flashed through them. "Who's sneaking around here?" Chapter 787. Don't take it out on others. Alright, I'll go upstairs. You deal with your own business. Having known him for 17 years, Xia Wei could tell why the man beside her was angry. Without hesitation, she pried his hand away, wrapped the towel tightly around her, and left without looking back. When Yi Qian came over, he saw the expressionless beauty who had just come out of the water walking towards him. He suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. The beauty was extremely beautiful and even had a hint of aggression. However, Yi Qian saw a resemblance to Xia Jinyuan in her beautiful facial features. Her eyes and expression were the most similar. They had the same cold gaze and the same arrogant expression. It was the kind of arrogance that came with being born into a good family. It wasn't annoying, but one could tell at a glance that she had a noble temperament and family background. Xia Wei also saw Yi Qian walking towards her. She raised her eyebrows with a faint smile. Wasn't this the girl that old Six had taken a fancy to? She was much prettier in person than in the photos. No wonder even a man like Ho-zi, who had high standards, said that she was not bad and was good-looking. What was rare was the tenacity in her eyes. It was unforgettable. So it's a little girl jogging nearby. I thought it was some lecher who came to the swimming pool early in the morning to look for a romantic encounter. Not bad, little girl. You're already consciously exercising at such a young age. Xia Wei stopped and looked at the girl who was looking at her with a smile in her eyes. If I had known, I would have gone for a morning jog with you. Sorry, I didn't notice that there was a swimming pool here when I was jogging. Sorry to disturb you. He had used a Ms. Xia's VIP card to book a room. Now that there was a lady who looked a little like Xia Jinyuan in front of him, he guessed that she was the Ms. Xia who had the VIP card. Yi Qian had even met Commander-in-Chief Xia before. Facing this lady who was related to Xia Jinyuan, Yi Qian didn't feel nervous at all. He spoke calmly, but there was a hint of lightness in his tone. This lightness made Xia Wei raise her eyebrows again. She said with interest, "Why do I feel like you know something?" "Know what?" Ho-zi walked over with an unhappy expression. Even her voice was a little heavy. When she looked at Yi Qian, there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. "Were you the one running just now? Could it be that you didn't sleep well last night?" So it was this little girl. It seemed that he was overthinking things. Yi Qian looked at the intimate couple standing side by side. He pursed his lips and said embarrassedly, "I'm sorry, Brother Z. I was jogging nearby and didn't mean to interrupt your swim with Miss Xia." It seems like he really knows something, and not just seems to know something. Xia Wei smiled brightly and extended her hand towards Yi Qian. She introduced herself, "I am Xia Wei, Xia Jinyuan's cousin, and also his closest cousin. You can call me Sister Wei like him." Don't call me Ms. Wei. It sounds a little awkward. Ho Zi took the opportunity to put her arm around the shoulders of the woman next to her and said to Yi Qian, "Last night, someone asked for your room information at the front desk. The lobby manager called me, and your sister Wei also informed me. It was your sister Wei who insisted that I come to the hotel. She even said that this little girl was the one that their sixth brother had taken a fancy to. If I didn't go, your sister Wei said that she would wait for her to deal with me. Their relationship was a little stiff just now, but now, in front of Yi Qian, her tone was sweet and there was no sense of distance between them." Chapter 788. Xia Yiwei's beautiful eyes glanced at the man who was trying to claim credit in front of her. The coldness in her eyes made Ho Zi's heart sink slightly. It was as if something was being separated between the two of them, making his heart flustered. After 17 years of interaction, even their quarrels were well hidden. Xia Yiwei didn't want Yi Qian to know about these things. She smiled and said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. Sixth brother called me before and asked me to look after you. I'm ashamed. I feel like I haven't done anything. If you have any problems in the future, you can contact me directly. My phone number is..." Xia Yiwei, who had seen Yi Qian's memory at the traffic bureau, directly reported her phone number, office number, and home number. She wasn't worried that Yi Qian wouldn't remember, and she only reported it once. Yi Qian looked at Xia Yiwei, who was already so beautiful with just a slight smile, and the amazement in his eyes grew. Family Xia's genes seemed to be very strong. Each one was more beautiful than the other. Ho Zi's eyes flashed with a hint of haze as he teased, "You're not sincere as an elder sister. You only reported your phone number once out of 3, and you didn't even write it down for the little girl. How is she supposed to contact you?" After that, he asked his subordinate to bring a pen and paper over. "It's fine if you can't remember, but why do you think Yi Qian can't remember? I heard from sixth brother that her brain's memory is so strong that she can clearly remember where she was, who she met, what she said, what she was doing at that time, and what she said in the past few months." After Xia Yiwei finished speaking, even Ho Zi, who had seen many storms in his life, was shocked. This wasn't an ordinary ability. How amazing must she be? How strong must her memory be? That amazing. That's incredible. If sixth brother of family Xia dares to do something bad in the future, I'll find out everything he did. I can already see that he's living very carefully in the future. Although she said that she was teasing Yi Qian, she was actually looking at Xia Yiwei. Sometimes, it's really scary when women dig up old scores. I hope family Xia doesn't give his woman so many old scores to dig up. What she said. Yi Qian wanted to cover his ears. Ever since Commander-in-Chief Xia came, she realized that she kept hearing things that she shouldn't hear. She couldn't leave even if she wanted to, but she could still hear things even if she covered her ears. It was all personal matters. Xia Yiwei's expression didn't change. She smiled coldly at Ho Zi, then turned to Yi Qian and said, "Old people sometimes like to recall their past mistakes. Don't take it to heart. You still have class today, right? It's already 6:30. Go back to your room and pack up. I'll send you to school." She wanted to get rid of Ho Zi. As she spoke, she gave Yi Qian a look. At the same time, she rolled her eyes slightly and elegantly. Yi Qian quickly nodded and naturally said politely, "Thank you, Sister Wei. I was just thinking if I should take a taxi to school. I didn't expect it to be resolved so quickly." The woman beside her was determined not to talk to her. Ho Zi suppressed her anger and maintained the demeanor of a mature man. She sighed and said, "Aren't you afraid of scaring your brother's sweetheart? Don't scare her. She's still young and can't be scared. When she looked at Yi Jian again, she seemed to say meaningfully, your sister Wei has been unhappy at work these days. If she complains later, for the sake of Ah Yuan, don't make a fuss about it with your sister Wei. Chapter 789. The two of them were exchanging puns. Fortunately, Yi Jian was smart enough to notice the difference. If it was someone else, they probably wouldn't have understood a single word. Ho Zi had already instructed her subordinate, go prepare breakfast and drive Miss Xiao's car to the entrance. The breakfast was packed for Xia Yiwei and placed in the car. It was filled with exquisite pastries and a red date soup to warm up and dispel the cold. Miss Xia, Brother Zi said you were drenched in the rain last night. You must drink this soup. Brother Zi is afraid you'll cough. The breakfast was personally delivered by the lobby manager. From the way he delivered it, it was clear that Ho Zi cared about Xia Yiwei. After the car door closed, Xia Yiwei glanced at the revolving glass door before starting the car and driving away. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the back, had never been interested in personal matters. He didn't look into the hall and said embarrassedly, Sister Wei, I can go there myself. Why don't you drop me off at an easier intersection? Silly girl, although I don't want to talk to Ho Zi, I'm still very willing to send you to school. The unpleasant personal matters didn't affect the smile on Xia Yiwei's face. The haze in her eyes disappeared as she chatted with Yi Qian. Brother Six told me a long time ago to take care of you. Now that the opportunity has come, you have to give Sister Wei a chance. There was a very important reason why Yi Qian didn't like to listen to other people's private matters. It was quite awkward to listen to other people talk about their own private matters. She looked a little unnatural and said with a look of embarrassment, Sister Wei, don't take it to heart. I'm an adult, I can take care of myself. Besides, I'm at school all day. I really don't have anything to trouble Sister Wei with. Xia Yiwei glanced at the rearview mirror and saw that Yi Qian's fair face had turned red. She immediately smiled. When a beauty smiled, it was as if 100 flowers were blushing. Oh my God, Yi Qian, you get shy too easily. Let me tell you, Brother Six is a thick-skinned person. He's been a hooligan since he was young. If you're so shy, he'll definitely eat you up. Sister Wei, let me tell you, don't spoil him. Sixth brother, you look cold and arrogant now, but when you wear the military uniform, you can directly become the spokesperson of the army. But once he unleashes his inner strength, no one in our family can withstand it. You can't spoil him. If you say 1, it's 1. If you say 2, it's 2. If you say 1, it's 2. He has to listen to you. Yi Qian was speechless. First, there was Commander-in-Chief Xia who taught her how to subdue Xia Jinyuan. Then, there was her cousin who taught her how to tame Xia Jinyuan. She was really a little curious. Just how much of a fool had he been in the past to give his family such a headache? Sixth brother is disobedient. Even now, old Madam says that she has never seen a child as shameless as him. He's so disobedient, but no one can blame him for the things he does. Although Xia Yiwei and Xia Jinyuan were cousins, she had always been studying in the capital. She even completed her university studies in the capital. Thus, she became Xia Jinyuan's cousin who had spent the most time with him. Naturally, they became the closest cousins. When she mentioned her younger brother, she had a look of disdain on her face. However, her expression was extremely proud. There were many things that Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't know, but Xia Yiwei definitely knew. For example, Xia Yiwei and Ho Zi's secret relationship lasted for 17 years. No one in the family Xia knew about it, but Xia Jinyuan was the first to know. He was also the only one in the family Xia who knew about it. Chapter 790. I'm different from Hosea. We can't conspire together. It's been 17 years, and the whole family doesn't know that sixth brother contributed greatly. But I didn't expect that you would bump into us at the hotel. At this point, Yi Qian's eyes flashed faintly, and a strange feeling rose in her heart. Their 17-year relationship was not discovered by the family, but she happened to bump into them. She couldn't help but think deeper about it. Brother Z is very good to Sister Wei. He even put in a lot of effort to prepare breakfast for her. Yi Qian, who couldn't figure it out, didn't dare to say too much. Even Xia Jinyuan helped her hide their relationship. It was enough to tell that family Xia would definitely oppose it if she found out. What's more, Hosea had said, if you have any complaints, don't be calculative with Sister Wei for the sake of Captain Xia. After saying that, she even gave him a meaningful look, clearly reminding him to be careful in the car. What exactly should she be careful of? How could an outsider like her understand what was going on between the two of them? She couldn't see how the two of them interacted, but she could tell that their relationship was very difficult. One was a public figure, while the other was a politician. The two of them even had different political views. It would be strange if family Xia didn't object. Xia Yiwei tightened the steering wheel, made a gentle turn, and drove straight ahead. She could see the gate of the provincial first high school. Yes, it's very good. Unfortunately, there are too many things between us. It's like a river between us. We can only shake hands across the river, but we can't get close. You're different from sixth brother. Although you're young now, sixth brother is young too. You're only 6 years apart. When you come out, sixth brother can give you some advice. I'm very optimistic about your relationship, and I look forward to seeing you at home one day. Forget it. The young lady had probably guessed that she wanted to take one last gamble. She wanted to gamble that the young lady would inadvertently mention her relationship with Hosea in front of her uncle. In the end, the relationship that had been hidden for 17 years would be exposed. It was a ridiculous gamble. There was no hope at all. It was ridiculous that she wanted to try it on a young lady. At 7:30 in the morning, there were already countless students entering the school gates. Yi Jian waved her hand and sent Xia Wei off. Then, she carried a paper bag with camouflage uniforms and raincoats into the school gates. Good morning, Yi Qian. Good morning, Yi Qian. Morning, Yi Jian, you didn't even get tanned after a few days of military training. I've become black skin. Yesterday, when I entered the house, my mother said, "Where did this child mine worker come from?" I felt like the sky. Yi Qian, Yi Qian Qian's, Yi Qian Qian. Qian, Qian, Qian Qian, Qian Qian, Qian, Qian Qian, 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 Qian. Amidst the greetings, Yi Qian revealed a bright smile that only a student could have. It was like a blooming flower that exuded pure beauty. Due to the heavy rain yesterday, the students who didn't board at home didn't come to school. Now that it was almost time for the morning self-study session, more students came in. Yi Qian was quite lucky. He just missed the peak period. He returned to the dormitory and put his clothes away. Then he immediately picked up his textbooks and went to the classroom. Year 2 Class 1 had always been good at self-learning. When Yi Qian entered the classroom, all the students had their heads lowered. They were either working on a project or memorizing it silently. Year 2 was here, and the college entrance examination was not far away. It was time to study hard and prepare for the college entrance examination. Chapter 791. As soon as she sat down, Zhao Hai walked over with a test paper in his hand. Yi Qian, help me take a look at this. I couldn't figure it out last night. Yi Qian could already foresee that this question would be extremely difficult. Even the top student in the first grade was stumped by it. Sitting in the classroom, Yi Qian stopped thinking about the outside world. Instead, she and Jiao Hai worked on the problem. They had never learned it before, but both of them had learned it on their own. Yi Qian was very familiar with the formula. After adding in 2 formulas, she overturned the rest of Jiao Hai's calculations. This formula is quite unfamiliar. I don't think I've seen it before. Jiao Hai saw her moving her pen quickly and adding in a formula that he had never seen before. He couldn't help but ask, "Where did you see it?" Yi Qian's mind was very rigorous. At the same time, she had been trained by Principal Qin to be able to multitask even if there was a disturbance in the outside world. She smiled and said, "Advanced mathematics is actually matrices." Matrices were mentioned in high school mathematics, but they could be classified as university geometry. Furthermore, their mathematics teacher hadn't taught them yet, so Jiao Hai didn't touch on them. This made Jiao Hai realize once again the gap between himself and Yi Qian. After she finished explaining to him, he smiled and sighed. Studying is indeed a talent. I study late every night, but compared to you, I'm still a far cry. Yi Qian didn't study in the classroom at night. According to her roommates, Yi Qian also didn't read much in the dormitory. However, she read very quickly. They often saw her borrowing books from the library and returning them. They didn't know whether she was reading seriously or not. It felt like she was, but it also felt like she wasn't. You're not worse than me. It's just that I'm involved in a wide range of subjects. That's why you feel that way. Yi Qian didn't know that she was constantly comparing herself with her classmates. She wanted to know that sometimes, comparisons could hurt. She would help any of her classmates, but she didn't want them to think that she was worse than her. As they were talking, Lu Axian rushed into the classroom. When he saw Yi Qian, he ran over and said, Yi Ying is in the process of transferring schools. I saw her in Teacher Tong's office. Yi Ying is so arrogant. She even said, since Teacher Tong doesn't like her, then she can only transfer to a school that can tolerate her. If I didn't hear her say that with my own ears, I wouldn't believe that Yi Ying would say something like that. After the military training incident, the entire class's impression of Yi Ying could not be any worse. Now, if the class were to vote for who they hated the most, it would definitely be Yi Ying. Yi Qian closed the papers and handed them to Jiao Hai. He looked up and smiled faintly. Since she doesn't think it's her fault, she'll naturally think it's someone else's fault. For a person who doesn't like to admit her mistakes, anything she says is normal. Then, there's nothing to be surprised about. It was Yi Ying's style to be able to say such words. Even if she left, she would leave in a way that would upset the people who stayed behind. What you said makes a lot of sense. Lu Axian scratched his head. When he looked up, he saw that more than 10 students who were originally sitting in their seats had gathered around him. He chuckled and said, I came over to tell you that Yi Ying has transferred schools. In the future, our class will have one less pretty girl. It's quite a pity. Boys were not used to speaking ill of girls. Lu Axian didn't like Yi Ying either, but he wasn't used to speaking ill of her. Chapter 792. So what if she's pretty? No matter how pretty she is, what she does isn't pretty at all. A girl curled her lips in disdain and rolled her eyes. It's a good thing she transferred away. If she didn't, the whole class would be in a mess. The 3 dormitories of the science class 1 were full. There were only 6 girls in each dormitory, so there was a total of 18 girls. None of them had a good relationship with Yi Ying. No one was reluctant to see her leave. I really couldn't tell that she was this kind of person. She even dared to talk back to the teacher. It's fine if she left. The things she does really make people feel uncomfortable. She likes to wrongly accuse people. I went home yesterday and told my mom. The students who were gathered around gradually dispersed. They spoke softly, as if they had sent away a troublesome person. Not only did the students feel relieved, even the teacher felt relieved. It's good to go to another school. A new environment is a new starting point. I wish you good results in your new school. In the face of the silent student, Teacher Tong just smiled. You are a smart student. I believe that everything will get better. Not every student was incorrigible. Yi Ying's performance in the first semester of high school was indeed excellent. Hopefully, without Yi Qian's influence, she could return to her good performance in the first year of high school. Sun Dongqing, who had accompanied her daughter here, pulled a smile on her round face. She said coldly, "A teacher is a teacher. You can say high-sounding words as soon as you open your mouth. My daughter will naturally get better. How can she not get better without a biased teacher like you?" If a student's words and actions had a chance to change, but as an adult and a student's parent, then the atmosphere in the family was bad. A student's growth could not be separated from their family. With such a mother by her side, Teacher Tong shook her head secretly and maintained her smile. She replied calmly, "We teachers treat all students equally. If any parent thinks that I'm inappropriate in my work or biased in your child's education, you're welcome to point it out." After teaching for so many years, Teacher Tong naturally would not give Sun Dongqing a chance to make a scene. After saying that calmly, she looked at Yi Ying with a smile and let the girl who was no longer her student speak. How could Yi Ying say anything? She smiled coldly and said, "I still have to rush to class in the province's second high school. I'll have the opportunity to listen to Teacher Tong's teachings. Goodbye, Teacher Tong." Compared to Sun Dongqing, as a daughter, Yi Ying's words were more artistic. Even if this kind of student transferred to a good school, with such an indiscriminate mother by his side, it would be difficult for him to become a great talent, but he could still become a small talent. Compared to Yi Qian, Yi Ying paled in comparison. The mother and daughter walked out of the teacher's office. Yi Ying's face was gloomy. She was no longer as arrogant as before. "Mom, let's wait for Dad in the car." She didn't want to stay in this place any longer. "What are we waiting for in the car? Your father has the car keys. Let's go straight to the principal's office to look for him." Sun Dongqing, who had never thought that her daughter had done anything wrong, could not feel Yi Ying's awkwardness at school. She smiled and said, "Mom is happy that you don't have to suffer from your own class teacher's anger." She gritted her teeth and said, "If it weren't for the fact that you still have to report to second high, I would have run into the classroom and tear that wretched girl's mouth apart. Let's see if she still dares to speak ill of you in the future." Chapter 793. A child with a mother was a treasure, while a child without a mother was a blade of grass. In Sun Dongqing's eyes, Yi Qian was just a blade of grass. Two girls walked towards her from the corridor. When they saw Yi Ying, they stopped in their tracks. They lowered their heads and whispered, "Yi Ying from class 1. I didn't expect her to be this kind of person. How disgusting. Let's go, let's go." Saying it was embarrassing was an understatement, but the students from other classes were disgusted. How could they not hear their whispers when they brushed past each other? Yi Ying's face turned pale when she heard them. She was so frustrated that she wanted to disappear. "Mom, let's go." She pushed Sun Dongqing, who still wanted to ask where the principal's office was. Yi Ying, who was so frustrated that she was about to cry, was so angry that she wanted to rush into the classroom to settle the score with Yi Qian. But she didn't have the guts. The 2 lessons from the military training made her realize that Yi Qian wasn't someone she could touch. She wanted to, but she was powerless. But she wasn't in a hurry. Grandma and her aunt's family were also waiting to deal with Yi Qian. Then, she wasn't in a hurry. There's no hurry. I have to endure. If I make another mistake, even Dad won't forgive me. Endure for a while and calm down. Take it slow. Take it slow. There's still a long way to go. Ying lowered her head and stared at her toes. She softly warned herself in a voice that only she could hear. Ying finally learned her lesson after suffering one loss after another. She temporarily suppressed her impulses and didn't run to the classroom to cause a ruckus. Sun Dongqing saw her daughter walking down the stairs and cursing Yi Qian. Damn girl, you're getting bolder and bolder. She hurriedly chased after her. In the principal's office, Principal Chao directly rejected Yi Jifan's request. He said calmly, "It's the morning self-study period. The students have already started class. Our school prohibits students from running out during class. Please forgive us. Your school is indeed strict. It's a pity that my daughter doesn't know any better and missed out on such a good school." Yi Jifan could tell that the school was trying to protect Yi Qian. A cold glint flashed across his eyes as he stood up with a smile. "Then I won't disturb Principal Chao any further. I'll treat you to a meal when I have the chance." There were 3 things that Yi Jifan wanted to take care of when he came to school. In the end, he only managed to help Ying with the transfer procedures smoothly. The other 2 things were not completed. She wanted to personally retrieve Yi Ying's school records but failed. She also wanted to meet Yi Qian but failed. As long as Yi Qian was still in school, old Madame Yi and Yi Jifan had no way of seeing Yi Qian. They didn't even have an excuse to ask her to come out. Principal Chao politely walked him to the office door. "Mr. Yi, you're too polite. You're doing this for the children, but our school is doing this for the students. Since the students can no longer study well in school, we can only ask the parents to worry about them. We will pay more attention to the child's growth. Principal Chao, please stay. I won't disturb you any further." They were both polite and courteous. Yi Jifan left the office with a smile on his face, maintaining the modesty of a government official. As soon as they left the school gate, Yi Jifan's face darkened. He left with the mother and daughter who were waiting for him. "Yi Ying, this is your last chance. I don't want to go to the provincial second high school just to clean up your mess. I hope to hear good news about you in school. This is my last and only request for you." The family of 3 left in a hurry. They didn't notice a second-year girl hiding behind a camphor tree. It was only when they left the school gate that she came out. Chapter 794. Oh my God, I'm happy to hear such good news so early in the morning. Even if I get punished for being late, I'm still happy, and Jessin giggled as she dashed back to the classroom like a gust of wind. At this time, the morning self-study session had already started 5 minutes ago. The second-year Class 1 students were late to copy the text 5 times as punishment. After the morning self-study session, and Jessin, who had to copy the text as punishment, took her notebook and sat at the same table as Yi Qian. While she was busy copying the text, she could also join in the discussion about Yi Ying's transfer. "Aren't I late? I happened to see Yi Ying walking with her parents. She walked so fast as if she had wheels on her feet. She wrote quickly and did not forget to laugh. Evil people get their just desserts. Serves her right. So that's what happened. She's too bold. She even wronged her own instructor. She deserves to be expelled. She really deserves it. The second-year Class 1 has sent away a plague." Most of the students thought so. Those who had been in the same class as Yi Ying in the first year wanted to say something, but their voices were weak and could not compete with Tao Tao's criticism. After a few words, they stopped. She had already left. There was nothing left to say. At this time, Yi Ying appeared in the second-year class of the province's second high school. Because of her excellent grades, she was naturally assigned to the experimental class. After the morning self-study session, by the time the first class started, all the second-year classes knew about Yi Ying's transfer. Even her disrespect to teacher Tong was spread. Yao Jing knew that Yi Ying would transfer schools, but she did not expect her transfer to be so fast. She looked for Luo Ran, who also knew about the news, 10 minutes after class ended. You'd better not stand up for her. She's gaining momentum. Even if you stand up for her now, you won't gain anything. Yao Jing looked at Luo Ran, who was so angry that his face was contorted. She calmly analyzed, also, I need to tell you that Yi Qian might have some martial arts skills. I didn't see it during the target practice session, but all the second-year class 1 students said that Yi Qian is good. Think about it. Do you think you can defeat someone like him with your fists alone? This was not good news. If she did not tell Luo Ran in advance, she was afraid that he would go after Yi Qian in a fit of anger. It wasn't because of Luo Ran that he reminded him, but because he thought that he needed to use the people in society that Luo Ran knew to stand up for him. Don't worry, I'm not going to look for her now. Next Friday, I have a duel with Yi Qian. When Luo Ran returned home, he was also severely taught a lesson. Even his pocket money was confiscated. He also had to shrink his neck and live his life. Yao Jing looked at him in disbelief, but when she heard that he was going to have a duel with Yi Qian next Friday, her eyes lit up. That's fine. We have to behave ourselves for the next half a month. Don't let anything happen in school. After that, he continued, what about Yongheng? You haven't made up with him yet. For the sake of Yi Qian, was there a need to go over and apologize? Yongheng was not petty. Bah. At first, Luo Ran was still considering whether he should reconcile with Yongheng. Now that he was asked to take the initiative to apologize, Luo Ran immediately turned hostile and shouted in a rough voice, I fucking broke up with him a long time ago. It was impossible for them to reconcile. Fine, fine. Why do you care so much? Go to class. He was truly a piece of mud that couldn't be supported. A real man should know when to yield and when to stand tall. He didn't even know that. Yao Jing, who had finished criticizing him in her heart, glared at him. She did not try to persuade him anymore. She turned and walked towards the classroom. After taking 2 steps, Yao Jing counted on her fingers. Next Friday. Wasn't it Yongheng's birthday? Chapter 795. Then she would have to think about what gift to give him. It was his 18th birthday, so she had to make it special. She wondered if Uncle Yang and Auntie Yang would consider holding a birthday party for Yongheng. After all, it was his 18th birthday. They would probably do it, right? To hold a birthday party, she would have to buy a gown and do her hair. She still wanted to give Yongheng a gift. Yongheng had already arranged to meet Yi Qian at noon. At noon, Yi Qian met Yongheng on the school's rooftop after lunch. The weather had turned cold. Standing on the rooftop, they felt the cool breeze of autumn. Yongheng arrived about 5 minutes early. When he saw Yi Qian, his handsome and clean face broke into a smile. This place is not bad. You can see the river. You really know how to find a place to hide. I haven't been to the rooftop of a school building. Yi Qian walked to his side and looked over at the same spot. She saw the river flowing to the end. She handed over the portrait in her hand. I'll have to trouble you with this, but please keep it a secret from me. In 1997, the public security system was still being improved. Not all wanted criminals and fugitives had portraits. Sometimes, even if there were, it was only in the local public security system. It was not in the national public security system. Yang Heng took the portrait and looked at it. He praised, "I didn't see it last time. This time, I got what I wanted. It's really good. It's at a professional level. When did you learn this? Do you still have time to learn?" This question was a bit sharp. Yi Qian raised her eyebrows and chuckled. "This is called talent. Sometimes, you don't have to put in a lot of effort to learn. When you want to draw, you can draw it. It's my birthday next Friday. Come to my 18th birthday party tonight." Yi Qian was still thinking about how to explain, but Yang Heng's focus was not on how she could draw, but on inviting her to his birthday party. Yi Qian was stunned when she heard that he was inviting her to his 18th birthday party. "My 18th birthday party. I'm going." In her previous life, Yi Qian had never attended anyone's birthday banquet. She lived such a life and didn't want to disturb others' peace. She was afraid that Yi Ying would vent her anger on others because of her. Therefore, not only did she not attend a birthday party in her previous life, she did not even have a single good friend. She was indeed a little surprised to receive such an invitation, but she quickly calmed down and said with a smile, "How can I go? The people you invited are all classmates. I'll go over now. My classmates have been encouraging me to invite you. There are a few darts enthusiasts in my class. They know that you're good at shooting, so they want to see if you know how to play darts." The reason was very good, and it was a real reason. Seeing her so surprised, Yang Heng's clean face showed a little embarrassment. "It's a little sudden. I also plucked up the courage to say it in one breath. I'm afraid that I won't have the courage to say it later. It's not sudden. I'm just a little surprised. If that's the case, I'll definitely be there on time." Yi Qian didn't refuse. She wanted to live a real, happy high school life that she had never experienced in her previous life. She didn't think she could refuse a normal social life. Once rejection became a habit, she would lose not only fun, but also friends. After getting a response, Yang Heng returned to the classroom. Several boys in the class surrounded him. "How was it? Did you agree? Hey, hurry up and say it." Chapter 796. I scared her. Yang Heng deliberately sighed to whet the appetite of the boys who were good at darts. "I'm also quite embarrassed myself." The boys thought that they had lost their chance and shouted in unison, "Fuck, even a handsome guy can't do it. Where's the pretty girl in our class? Let's invite the pretty girl to play." Yi Qian's seniors were all curious about her. She didn't even study in high school, yet she could get into a second-tier university just by taking a test. She was like a genius. Yang Heng teased them, then slowly smiled and said that Yi Qian had agreed to participate. The boys immediately put their arms around Yang Heng's neck and said, "Are you kidding us? You're asking for a beating." Not long after, the boys started laughing and playing around. School was a place where there were only worries about studying. Aside from that, all that was left was happiness and happiness. Yi Qian missed out on such a simple school life in her previous life, but she would not miss it again in this life. Yang Heng held a birthday party for his birthday. Other than his classmates, he also invited the students from the same basketball team as him. As for Luo Ran, when he heard that Yang Heng had invited his teammates, he threw the basketball in his hand to the ground and left. "What's this? Isn't it just an 18th birthday party? What's so great about it? When I'm 18, we'll all go to the Caesar Grand Hotel. As soon as he left the basketball court, Luo Ran snorted with a gloomy face, "I'll deal with you sooner or later." His bad relationship with Yang Heng was not a secret in school. When Yi Qian heard the boys from her class talking about it, she couldn't help but frown. Luo Ran liked to play dirty, so Yang Heng had to be careful. Yi Qian planned to mention it when Yang Heng brought the news back to her, but the intense monthly exam was about to start. Yi Qian even used her free time to study. Sometimes it was for herself, sometimes it was for her classmates. "I got this question wrong again. I'm so stupid. Teacher Zhang said so last time. I even got 2 basic questions wrong. Sigh, I was too careless." Yi Qian seems to have scored full marks again. I have to learn from her. Her grades have always been very high. The monthly exam is a piece of cake for her. "Hey, can you explain this question to me? I got it wrong." After 4 consecutive nights of self-study, the self-study class on Friday night became a discussion class. Yi Ying's departure did not affect the class. Wanwan had an exam, so no one had time to care about other things. Yi Qian had to pay attention to the abrasions on his arms this week, so he didn't even go to the training grounds. He spent all his time at school. After waiting for 5 days and not seeing Yi Qian, old Madam Yi, who was staying in the hotel, did not look too good. "Jifan, do you think Mom is easier to coax than before? You can easily deal with the tasks that are given to you." Without Sun Dongqing in the room, old Madam Ye's face lost its usual friendliness. "It seems that you've become a high-ranking official and have begun to play tricks in front of me." Yi Jifan, who was sitting on the sofa in the office, smiled helplessly and said, "Mom, look at what you're saying. Which task of yours did I not do well? Yi Qian is at school. I can't just barge in. Also, I took half a month off because of what you asked me to do. I want to help you relieve your worries. Tomorrow is Saturday. Let's see if she'll come out. I've got people watching at the school gate. As soon as she comes out, I'll immediately bring her to you." Yi Jifan was telling the truth, but in old Madam Ye's ears, it sounded like a perfunctory remark. Chapter 797. You're much more eloquent than before. Although I'm happy to hear that, I'm still upset that you didn't get what you wanted. Old Madam Yi sighed as she spun the prayer beads in her hand. There was an indescribable sadness in her heart. She didn't see this girl. So be it. There was another thing to talk about. Old Madam Yi spun the prayer beads in her hand faster as she thought about it. Old Madam Yi had the habit of chanting Buddhist scriptures in the morning. She spun the prayer beads in her hand once before putting them back on her wrist. She picked up the black tea that Yi Zhixiang had brewed for her and said, "Your sister's tea skills have improved. The tea leaves are of high quality. You can try it. If you like it, you can take 2 bottles back and keep it for yourself. It's not bad to give it away." Old Madam Yi had spent the most effort on her daughter's matters. She only hoped that her daughter's family would be safe and sound. As for her son, the old man had already said that he would never grow up well. "Mom, you know that I don't have the habit of drinking tea. Drinking a few mouthfuls of water can also quench my thirst." Yi Jifan had been an official for many years. He was no match for old Madam Yi in the past, but that might not be the case now. After a lukewarm rejection, Yi Jifan looked at old Madam Ye's face darkened. He smiled faintly and said, "Mom, you've been living with little sister for so many years. It's normal that you don't know my living habits. Don't blame yourself." "I'm not blaming you." Old Madam Yi used to speak like this, but now Yi Jifan was giving her a taste of her own medicine. Old Madam Ye's eyes instantly darkened. "You've all grown up. You've all grown up. Now that you've grown up, you don't take me seriously. Although old Madame Ye's expression was not good, her tone did not change at all. Her voice was so old that it sounded a little bleak. For your sister's sake and your two nephews' sake, think of a way to use some connections to get rid of your brother-in-law's identity. You should try your best to get this done. Your brother-in-law's identity isn't very good now. It wasn't easy for our family to have you as an official. Mom hopes that our family will be safe and sound. Money is not a problem. It's fine as long as it can be solved. Just as Yi Jifan had guessed last night, old Madame Yi had brought her daughter's family back to solve Sun Yaozu's identity as a fugitive. She wanted to use Yi Jifan's connections to try. It would be a good thing if it succeeded, but if it didn't, it wouldn't affect anything. At most, he would let his daughter and son-in-law go abroad to avoid it. Now that he had money in his hands, it was easy to get things done. Hearing this, Yi Jifan threw the teacup in his hand onto the coffee table and sneered, "Mom, you're really considerate of Zhixiang's family. Using my future in exchange for Sun Yaozu's identity. Mom, are you still treating me like a fool? You're almost 40 years old. Why are you still so impatient? When did I ever want to gamble with your future? It's just that since you've been promoted so quickly, you should have some backing. That's why I wanted to see if you had any ideas." His impatience made old Madame Yi feel even more relieved. Since he dared to give her such a cold shoulder, it seemed like he really did have a powerful backing. Yi Jifan's expression was not just cold. He said directly, "Then I can only tell you that I really don't have any ideas. Changing the identity of a fugitive just like that. You're really daring. All these years, I'm used to spending money to settle things. The older I get, the more I don't know how to restrain myself." Chapter 798. As he spoke, he stood up. His eyelids drooped lightly as he looked coldly at the old lady. "I still have some matters to attend to in the afternoon, so I can't accompany you anymore. Goodbye." A trace of coldness flashed through old Madame Ye's cloudy eyes. The nerves on her orange peel-like old face twitched slightly. Her double chin also trembled. This time, old Madame Yi was really angry. "Stop right there." She stood up as well and coldly looked at this son that she had only brought back from the outside and lied to old man Yi that she had carried for 10 months. She said in a low voice, "You don't have the right to shout and wrangle in front of me. If it weren't for me, who knows where you would still be a beggar right now." Old man Yi had already said that before. Since he wasn't her biological son, she naturally wouldn't be able to raise him well. In return, Yi Jifan smiled coldly. "You don't have to worry about whether or not I'll be a beggar somewhere. That's right, I'm not related to you by blood, but I'm related to the Yi family by blood. Otherwise, how could Dad not have realized that I wasn't his son at all back then? In the past, you could use the fact that I'm not your son to threaten me because I had to go through a background check. But now, do you think it's still okay?" Since he had already torn down the last piece of cloth, Yi Jifan didn't want to give her any face. "I treat you as my mother, so you're still my mother. If I don't acknowledge you and want to look for my biological mother, you can't do anything to me. Mom, you're old. You're almost 70 years old. How can you still be so lawless outside? Follow little sister and enjoy your old age. You should stay out of the affairs of your children and grandchildren. It seems that you don't want the jade pendant I gave you." Old Madame Yi, who was so angry that her heart ached, took out her trump card and coldly threatened, "This is the jade pendant that Sun Shuiqing gave to Yi Qian. As an uncle, how can you be so shameless to hide it? This unfilial thing." Was this how he repaid her, his mother, by raising him? She wasn't his biological mother, but she had at least fed him and raised him. Yi Jifan, who had already guessed what would happen last night, would not be threatened by her. With a faint smile, he looked at the angry old lady and slowly said, "Mom, you really don't have to worry. Little sister took away sister-in-law's pitiful pension. At least that girl Yi Qian knows that I took this jade pendant. I forgot to tell you that Yi Qian still remembers when she was 3 years old. Do you think she remembers that you and Xiaomei received the pension from eldest sister-in-law?" Yi Zhifan had thought it through last night. Now that the identity of the person behind Yi Qian was still unknown, it would be unwise to confront her again. In that case, their family could only bear with it and wait for his position to be completely stabilized. Their daughter, Yi Ying, would also be able to make a move against Yi Qian. The jade pendant would allow him to have a meteoric rise in his career. Yi Qian would not be able to take it away from him. After speaking, Yi Zhifan tidied his clothes and didn't forget to tell old Madame Yi, "Rest well." Only then did he leave. This time, old Madame Yi was defeated by the son she had brought in. She thought that she had everything under control, but she didn't know that Yi Zhifan used to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now that he had a certain status, he didn't need to be afraid of old Madame Yi anymore. If old Madame Yi still wanted to use him to settle the matter with her biological daughter, Yi Zhixiang's family, then she had no choice but to swallow her anger. In terms of scheming, Yi Zhifan had reached his current position. How could he be worse than an old lady? Chapter 799. Old Madame Yi, who knew she was at a disadvantage, didn't say anything else. She watched as Yi Zhifan left the room and slowly sat down on the sofa. After a long time, a cold smile appeared on her lips. "Very good, you do have some ability. Yaozu's matter should be settled by him." The confrontation between the mother and son fell into the ears of Ho Zi's subordinates. They recorded the conversation on a tape and sent it to Ho Zi that night. Ho Zi wasn't interested in the family's secrets, but with this tape, she had an excuse to call Xiao Wei. No matter how many things happened outside, it didn't affect Yi Jian at school. After 4 days, the gauze on her arm could finally be put aside. By next Friday, the graze of the stray bullet had completely healed, leaving only a scar the size of a 5.5mm bullet. Yi Jian looked at the wound that she could see when she raised her hand. She thought of the fine scars on Xia Jinyuan's shoulders, arms, and chest. This time, she had another scar that represented glory. The first scar was the slightly large one on her lower back. It was the scar that scared Enjussin when she took a shower. It was the scar from the fight with the mercenaries in the no man's land. It had been 2 weeks since the military training. The second and third year students had gradually gotten over the influence of the military training. They would only occasionally mention something about the military training. On the 20th of October, the weather was cold enough to wear 2 sets of clothes. Yi Qian's clothes were relatively simple, except for the school uniform. It was still the school uniform. She didn't have much money to buy clothes, so 2 sets of school uniforms and 2 sets of camouflage uniforms were just right for training. After class on Friday, Yang Heng carried his backpack on one shoulder and stuck his hands in the pockets of his school uniform. The handsome and clean boy stood there like the sun. Even if his gaze was empty, it still attracted the attention of many girls. Yao Jing, Wang Dandan, and Lemei walked together. As they chatted and laughed, they saw Yang Heng standing at the school gate. Among the large group of students, the most eye-catching one was the tall and thin Yang Heng. He was easily spotted. "Is he waiting for me? You two go home first." I saw Yang Heng. Yao Jing, who was walking in the middle, let go of her friend's hands and skipped a step forward. She pointed to the figure at the school gate and said with a smile, "Yang Heng is waiting for me in front. I'm going to find him first." After Ying left, Yao Jing no longer hid her thoughts. Amidst her friends' laughter, Yao Jing practically skipped over. Yang Heng, who was originally standing at the school gate, had disappeared. In other words, he wasn't waiting for Yao Jing at all. It was just her wishful thinking. Yang Heng was waiting for Yi Qian. The whole class had already boarded the bus, except for Yi Qian, who had finished school a little later than them. I was really worried that you wouldn't come because you had something to do. Now that I've received you, I'm relieved. After receiving her, Yang Heng, whose footsteps were much lighter than before, laughed heartily. The few darts players in the car were even more nervous than me. They were even more afraid that you wouldn't be able to come at the last minute. The juniors in the first class all said that Yi Qian was a very busy person. Sometimes, they couldn't find her even if they wanted to. Yi Qian's lips curled up slightly. Her beautiful face had a faint smile like a blooming flower. No, I won't change my mind easily unless I really have something to do. Have fun tonight. The birthday party is at the hotel that my aunt owns. You can sleep in the hotel. I've arranged a separate room for you. Chapter 800. It wasn't because Yi Qian didn't know her classmates, but because Yang Heng subconsciously felt that girls like Yi Qian valued personal privacy. Like himself, he lived in the same dormitory. Even though they were all boys in the same class, he rejected asking about their privacy. Although Yi Qian was one class lower than them, in the eyes of the boys and girls, she was a mysterious shining light. They couldn't help but be curious and want to know more about her. If they were to share a room because of their curiosity, Yi Qian wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. It was a very careful arrangement. Although Yang Heng was a boy, he was also a very careful and thoughtful boy. The bus arranged by Yang Heng's aunt's hotel could seat 56 people. Including Yi Qian, there were 55 people. There was only one empty seat. The bus was right in front of them. They could see it within 10 meters of the school gate. Yao Jing, who chased after them, didn't see Yang Heng, but saw the bus. The name of the hotel sprayed on the bus made her smile. The 18th birthday party was indeed lively. Even Auntie Song's hotel bus was here to pick up her classmates. Auntie Song was Yang Heng's aunt. Yao Jing was familiar with the Yang family and Yang Heng's maternal relatives. When the seniors in the bus saw Yi Qian coming up with Yang Heng, the boys clamped their lower lips with their fingers and whistled sharply. The girls, on the other hand, laughed. Their laughter was somewhat ambiguous. Yang Heng was a popular figure in the school. He was also the Prince Charming in the hearts of the girls. Prince Charming was handsome, good at basketball, and was not a playboy. There had never been any rumors of him being particularly close to any girl in the school. Oh, except for a junior named Yao Jing from grade 12 class 6. However, he had never brought anyone to his class to play. This time, not only did he invite Yi Qian, but he also personally picked her up. TSK, TSK, TSK. No matter how one looked at it, it felt like Sima Zhao's intentions were obvious. All of you, retract your gazes, retract them. Don't scare junior sister Yi Jian. You guys wanted to play darts, but I had to shamelessly invite her over and scare her away. You guys are responsible for coaxing her back. In the class, Yang Heng had a good relationship with his classmates. One sentence from him was enough to make them laugh. Facing his senior brothers and sisters, Yi Qian laughed and said gracefully, "Greetings, senior brothers and sisters. I'm Yi Qian." It was very generous and wouldn't steal the limelight. It could be accepted by people who didn't like hot-tempered people, and it could also be accepted by people who liked straightforward people. It was polite and not invasive, and it was easier to get a good impression of people who weren't familiar with them. Junior sister Yi Qian, I heard that you're very good at shooting. Later on, we won't have any target practice, so we'll only be playing darts. Do you want to have a competition? The ones who shouted the loudest were the few boys who wanted to compete with Yi Qian in darts. They really just wanted to compete and didn't have any other intentions. Yang Heng put Yi Qian's bag on the luggage rack in the car. He said to Yi Qian, who was still gracious in front of her classmates, "They're the ones who are making the most noise. You'll have to teach them a lesson tonight. You haven't played darts before. You need to learn first." Yi Qian replied with a smile. Her beautiful eyes were calm. When she smiled, the girls closest to her couldn't help but look over. Chapter 801. The legendary genius shouldn't be difficult to get along with. Not only was she beautiful when she smiled, but she also made people feel comfortable. The boy laughed. It's fine, it's fine. It's all the same. As long as you're accurate, there won't be a problem. Then I'll need Senior to teach me first. I've never played before. Under Yang Heng's guidance, Yi Qian sat in the first row on the left by the window. She softly thanked him before sitting down. The boy behind her could only see the top of her head, but he still said excitedly, "No problem. I guarantee you'll be able to learn in one go." A girl sitting in the row behind the two of them stood up and snorted at the boys who were yelling, "You guys bully us girls with paper bombs every day in class. Tonight, we'll let our junior sister kill all of you." Then she said to Yi Qian in a friendly manner, "Junior Yi Qian, don't be afraid of them. We'll support you." The girl was a member of the publicity committee of grade 12. She had an apple-shaped face and a pair of dimples when she smiled, adding to her friendliness. "With the support of my seniors, even if I lose, I'll have to lose beautifully." Yi Qian's bright eyes softened as she looked at her senior. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Even if we lose beautifully, we'll still win." "Yes, yes, yes. We'll win decisively and lose beautifully." The car became lively. The driver was about to close the door when a petite figure rushed out from the side and slammed her hands on the slowly closing door. "There's still someone who hasn't gotten in yet. Why are you driving?" Fearing that the driver would open the door in fright, he held back his anger and said stiffly, "Fellow student, if something happens to you, how can we, the drivers, bear the responsibility?" The girl jumped into the car briskly and sat beside the driver. The students in the front seat recognized the girl and their eyes fell on Yang Heng, who was sitting on the right side of the car. It was Yao Jing from grade 12 class 6. Everyone in their class knew this junior sister of theirs. Yang Heng stood up and frowned. "Why aren't you home yet?" "Auntie Song, the car from the hotel is already here." "Why would I go home?" Yao Jing climbed up the car ladder with her head raised. She smiled at Yang Heng, who was leaning out to look at her. "I'll follow you." When she stood up and saw who was sitting next to Yang Heng, Yao Jing's gaze, which was originally smiling, suddenly became extremely sharp. It was more like the thorns on a cactus, shooting densely at Yi Jian. Her smile froze on her face. For a moment, Yao Jing couldn't maintain her composure, revealing a gloomy expression. Yi Qian. Yi Qian was also in the car. "Are you kidding me? What was she doing here, sitting with Yang Heng? Didn't Luo Ran say that he was going to duel her today? Then why was she still in the car? Also, when did she get so close to Yang Heng? He even invited her to his birthday party." On the night of the military training, she saw the two of them taking a walk together. Then she heard Ying say that she saw them, but they didn't interact after returning to school. How did they suddenly become so close? Countless whys made Yao Jing's expression turn worse and worse. Her glare at Yi Qian became sharper. It was hard to ignore her gaze. Yi Qian looked up and glanced at her coldly. A faint smile appeared on his lips as he looked away. Chapter 802. Unlike Ying, Yao Jing was more tolerant, so she didn't have to worry about quarreling with him in the car. With Yang Heng by her side, Yao Jing, who also liked to maintain her cheerful and optimistic image, wouldn't mess around. There's no seat in the car. You can go back first and come back with uncle and auntie later. Yang Heng didn't notice Yao Jing's strange behavior. He walked out of the car and was about to pull Yao Jing out. This is the car for my classmate. You can come back later. Yao Jing gently but firmly shook off Yang Heng's hand. She looked at him with a half-smile and said, "What's wrong? Is it not convenient for me to get in the car? Dandan and Lemay have gone back. I don't want to go back alone. You can sit in the lower seat. I'll sit with Yi Qian." She didn't give Yang Heng a chance to speak. She pulled his arm intimately and pulled him to the seat near the car door. "You sit here and I sit above. The seats are just right, aren't they?" Yao Jing. Yang Heng didn't like her behavior. It seemed easy to negotiate, but in fact, she was arbitrary. His clean and handsome face darkened. "Today is my birthday. I don't want to quarrel with you." He didn't invite Yao Jing, but his parents invited Uncle Yao. Naturally, Yao Jing was also invited. "I don't want to quarrel with you." Okay. You always like to be difficult with me." Yao Jing stuck out her tongue playfully. She stuck out her tongue at the two girls in front of her and said helplessly, "Seniors, is Yang Heng always so difficult in front of you?" The two seniors laughed. Ha. It's okay. Junior sister Yao Jing was indeed naughty and irresistible. It's okay. Why do I feel that it's not okay at all? Yao Jing curled her lips and put on a beautiful smile. She stood in the middle of the road and said in a crisp voice, "Greetings, senior brothers and sisters. I am Yao Jing. I grew up following Yang Heng. Tonight is Yang Heng's 18th birthday party. I'll hang out with seniors tonight. We must play until dawn and have a good night. That's what I call having fun." Her voice was clear and sweet, and the space between her brows was also natural and unrestrained. However, for some reason, the words that came out of her mouth sounded indescribably awkward. As for what exactly was awkward, it was hard to pinpoint. If he really had to say it, it would be like, "Everyone should listen to me. I'll make the decisions." Girls were usually sensitive. After hearing the voice, she glanced at Yang Heng and saw that his expression was also normal. She probably understood that this was an uninvited guest. Boys, on the other hand, liked to listen to it. Yang Heng didn't say to drive, so the driver waited. Yao Jing, who was talking to the boy, turned her head and said with a smile, "Sir, you drive. Yang Heng, let's go there early so we can treat your classmates to some snacks. Auntie Song, the dessert chefs in the hotel are all from Harbor City. Their skills are very good. Senior sister and senior brother, you can try it. It's really good. Yi Qian, you haven't eaten it yet, right? You should eat more. It's hard to eat it outside." They chatted and laughed as they sat beside Yi Qian. She introduced enthusiastically, "Auntie Song, the landscapers in the hotel are all from Harbor City. There are 2 swimming pools. One is outdoor and the other is indoor. I'll take you to the swimming pool. What's so fun about following Yang Heng? Follow me. You can play all the games in the hotel." Chapter 803. Yi Jian was not interested in any of Yao Jing's questions. Her sense of superiority was the same in front of other students. Now, she was asking her questions just to make fun of her for not having eaten the desserts in Harbor City and not having stayed in a good hotel. Ha, a good hotel. Caesar Hotel was the best hotel in the city. She stayed there for a night and even went for a morning run in the back garden. Speaking of a good hotel, she had to mention the hotel she stayed in when she went abroad with the leaders. The security was good, and the guards were either special forces or bodyguards from Zongnanhai. Yi Qian, who had no intention of competing with Yao Jing, smiled faintly at Yao Jing who was sitting beside him. He did not take her subtle provocation to heart. The car started, and Yang Heng gave Yi Qian a look, hinting Yi Qian to ignore her. He said to Yao Jing, "I'm afraid your parents are waiting at home. Give them a call when you arrive at the hotel." I know. You're so strict." Yao Jing frowned. She glared at Yang Heng and snorted. "If I don't remember, it's enough for you to remember." "Yi Qian, don't you think so?" In fact, there was no need to drag her along. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and looked at her. He said slowly, "You don't have to ask me. Ask yourself. I'm really not interested in your relationship with Yang Heng. What I'm interested in is defeating the boys who want to challenge me with my senior sisters. As for food and swimming, I'm not interested." The girls on the left nodded in agreement. "We'll cheer for you later. Don't brag all day long about how powerful you are. You're pissing us off." My forehead was hit by Wang Jin's paper bullet today. There was a small red mark. These guys need to be taught a lesson. A few girls walked past Yao Jing and started chatting with Yi Jian. Yi Jian naturally ignored Yao Jing's questions that made her feel superior. She didn't like talking to Yao Jing, but since it was Yang Heng's birthday today, she had to be discreet even if she didn't want to talk to her. Yao Jing thought that Yi Qian would at least answer her. If he did not answer her, she would have a way to let Yang Heng see Yi Qian's unreasonable behavior. But who knew that Yi Qian would not only answer her, but also bring the senior sisters into the conversation. This way, if she opened her mouth to talk about something unrelated, it would give the impression that she was showing off. "Yi Jian, you're really something." She was indeed cunning. No wonder she kicked a smart person like Yi Ying out of school within a month. Yao Jing, who was stuck in the middle of the conversation, tried to interrupt several times, but failed. Seeing this, she did not force herself to participate in their conversation. Instead, she looked at them with a polite smile. Yao Jing was able to keep her composure. Moreover, she had suffered a big setback at the hands of Yi Qian last time. She would not allow herself to fall into the same trap again so easily. "How do you usually revise?" "The girls in the science class are really suffering. I have a headache just looking at some of the questions and I don't know where to start. Boys are really quick-witted. Just a few words of advice and you know how to calculate." For good students, the usual topic was how to study if they did not leave the topic. As for the senior sisters, it was not that they deliberately ignored Yao Jing. It was just that every word she said had a strong sense of self-awareness. It was as if she was implying, "This is what I said. You can't refute me. Listen to me." After a few words, they lost interest. Chapter 804. When talking to Yi Jian, she would politely ask a few questions. Therefore, Yi Jian was interested in continuing the conversation and was willing to talk with her. After all, no one liked it when someone made a decision for them when they didn't even express their opinion. Every time Yi Jian asked her how to study, she felt a little embarrassed because she really didn't know how to study. If it was reading, then forget it. "I like to read and memorize formulas. Then I find a similar question and do it again. As long as I can understand it, it's usually not difficult. She gave a normal answer without any sense of superiority. She even felt a little embarrassed, which made the senior who asked her feel embarrassed. Yao Jing sneered inwardly. When no one else spoke to Yi Qian, she laughed softly and said, "They're about to graduate. You don't have to be so nice. It's fine as long as you don't embarrass them. There's no need to be so intimate. Being nice and being polite are two different things." "I'm just trying to be polite," Yi Qian replied calmly. He didn't seem interested in talking to her at all. People who were close to Yi Ying were basically like this. Their auras and magnetic fields did not match. "I didn't expect you to be so polite." "Not bad. Uncle Yang and Auntie Yang like polite girls. I'll introduce them to you." She naturally revealed how close she was to the Yang family. She was also warning Yi Qian to stay away from Yangheng. Yi Qian glanced at her and smiled. "Okay, we'll talk about it then. I'll definitely introduce them to you. It's rare for Yangheng to invite his classmates to his house. Aren't you his classmate? Since you've invited him, it can be seen that you have a good relationship in private." There were several meanings in her words. Yi Qian pretended not to understand. Compared to Yi Ying, Yao Jing was much harder to deal with. The hotel wasn't far from the school. It was just opposite the Caesar Hotel. Yi Qian got out of the car and looked at the hotel. Old Madame Yi and her family should have left already. There was still no news about the portrait that Yangheng had given her uncle. At this moment, she hoped that Sun Yaozu was still in Southern Province. Once they found out, it would be difficult for Sun Yaozu to leave Southern Province. The hotel had already arranged for the staff to arrange the rooms. One by one, they collected their keys and put their school bags back in their rooms. After resting for a while, they went to the hotel to have a buffet and then had some entertainment. "Why don't I have a room?" "Yangheng, you are so biased. I don't plan to go home tonight." "No, you have to book a room for me." All the students had a room card except for Yao Jing, who did not have one. She took the registration book from the receptionist. Since she was facing the receptionist, she didn't have to worry about being seen. Her gaze swept down coldly. When she saw Yi Qian's name, a dark haze flashed across her eyes. Yi Qian has a room to herself. Then there's no need to get a new room. It's pretty good for us two girls to stay together. As long as they could see the name of the person who checked in, Yangheng would take the registration book away before they could see the room number. Looking at her, Yangheng said in a cold voice, "If you continue to pester me like this, it will be really ugly. Yao Jing, listen carefully, I will never have anything to do with you. I know what happened in middle school. I just didn't want to say it out of respect for Uncle Yao and Auntie Yao. Yao Jing, you're on your own." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.